I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. Up first on our agenda is approval of minutes. Was everybody able to look over the minutes? Yes. Did we see any corrections that needed to be made? No, seeing none.
Move approval of minutes.
Thank you, Jack. Second. Thank you, Jim. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Is there any public comment on the minutes? None. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Sue, how do you vote? Any opposed? Motion passes. Up next, public comment. At this time, the board will allow public comment on matters that are not on the main agenda. Members of the audience are encouraged to briefly address the trustees on an issue that is not on the agenda. The board will seek comments from the audience on significant items as they occur. Public matters do not include any pending legal matters, private personnel issues, or private student issues. Please do not attempt to address such issues at this time or you'll be ruled out of order. Please note that individuals will be given 3 comments. Do I have any public comment tonight? Welcome. You can come right up over here to the mic. Tell us your name.
John Newnow. M as in Mary. I. M as in Mary. N as in Nancy. A-U-G-H. So, I was reading about the charter schools, and I think it's a terrible idea. Private schools that take public money. I heard a lot about the bare minimums.
John,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to stop you right
That's
there.
okay.
We have, charter schools are actually on the agenda.
Oh, they're on the
tonight.
agenda.
So,
No problem.
is it an action item
He can
on the
wait until
agenda?
comment during that.
So during that portion, after we speak about them, I'll call before we vote on them. We'll call for public comment. You can speak about it at that time.
Okay.
Thank you, John. Is there anybody else here for public comment? Okay, personnel action items. Liz? This is our personnel activity report. Have any questions?
I move approval of the personnel report.
Thank you, Jack. Have a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded.
I'm just trying to make sure I'm here. So, we have a girls basketball coach on here. That's all my discussion.
Moved and seconded. Any public comment? None. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sue, how do you vote?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Next, job description and review.
Sure, this is actually Randy's operation. We previously talked, Sue and I did prepare a presentation for this.
Yeah. Take a minute.
Everybody else is standing late. Heather, I have a question. I was wondering if both B and C can both be combined into one presentation instead of 2 separate ones?
one was prepared by Randy and one is prepared by, no, they both by Randy.
Mhm.
I didn't know if any of the other trustees would object to that. What's that? Right, well, part of the reason for my request for combining it was when we looked at, and I didn't think about this earlier, I just thought about it tonight, and that is when we looked at things in the IT department or a few other places, they were all lumped together as one, consideration and not as two separate considerations, and because this is the HR department and it's all one unit, I was just thinking, and because the, discussion's gonna be very similar in both cases, that it could just marry each other.
Randy has prepared both of them and he's fine with that, Jack.
Pardon?
Randy said you prepared both of those and he's fine with
Thank you. Go ahead.
I think the difference, Jack, is one is non-union exempt and one is non-union non-exempt matrix. That's the only difference that I see.
I'll sit where we're sitting.
I think the first thing to look at is, when this first came up, we asked Micah for information about how this started, so, I think if you click on the one that says, M Hill, we started exploring this, we asked Micah for more information about it, because basically it was started when he was still the superintendent and actually still, working as the HR director. And so then, this is regarding position reviews, and then he goes through and talks about, that he stated that he started it, but then he decided because of confidentiality and so forth, that, we'd wait until we hired a new HR director at KPS. And then, depending on the analysis, district could reasonably afford or to recruit for these positions in the future. Made it clear I support a recommendation to the board to increase the wages retroactive to July 1st, 2023 for these positions. And then he gives his opinion about Eden's position and Bromley's position. And then also reminds us to keep in mind that at that time, he was the acting superintendent and the human sources director. So based on that, then Liz did a job analysis, so I'll turn it over to her to talk about the analysis she did.
So first, I'll just address that I was actually supervisor in this role. Passed on to Randy. So I'm going to be speaking as their supervisor.
Just because we're online, do you want to turn?
Oh, yep, thanks, Matt. So we titled this a process completion. This is back in 2020. And so our next slide is actually a timeline of the process, and just wanted to share that this is not something that just got up in HR right before the outgoing superintendent that was passed on to HR. This is something that started back with an initial review of all the non-union people to be placed on a matrix. That would be so. That did include the human resources and the business departments as well. So on May 24th of 2022, these are the adjustments that were made for the business manager and recruitment manager positions to place them with their current job descriptions at the time on the matrices that were in place for everyone. So there's no longer a column E. Those columns for the recruitment manager were brought from 5 to 6. So it was determined that, and that's where that came from. And then Bromley's was adjusted to a salary position. So that included her salary plus her overtime. When we take that into consideration, that is the difference between the 59 and the 55,000 that time. There was an understanding made that job descriptions and placements would be reviewed for this school year. So that is sort of when the plan was passed to that moment in this. So that was one of the first emails I actually got in my KCS. Started thinking about it, digging in, and it was made clear that they would be very muddy waters if I continued. Brought Randy in to act as HR director. This did pass through the personnel committee on October 4th with a new review of Eden and Bromley's job, which we'll get into in a minute. The personnel committee tasked that Eden is not acting as a recruitment manager any longer, but actually an HR. And those job descriptions are other attachments. And then Bromley, the personnel committee decided was acting in a business administrator role for job descriptions from SHRM, the National Human Resources. And we decided that the title of business administrator may be so kept the title as business manager, but the job duties and requirements are aligned with the business administrator. After that was conducted, if we want to go down to, this has passed through the finance committee, it was tabled once, but it is now. After that was completed, we did a AA school comparison for Montana. So here's our districts, and then we were just looking at the size of the HR department. Matt, if you want to go to that. And then we dug in a little deeper with the actual salaries and the pay per HR department for staff size. So, we would like to have a second column for you that just has employees at this point, includes subs and coaches, all of whom do run through our department. And so wanted to mention that data is included here. Base pay, and then over on the right is with the adjustments that are being proposed. This would be our row for Kalispell Public Schools. So some things to know: our size of HR department, salaries, as well as how the HR departments are distributed. Included in, so also as attachments on the agenda are the actual job review, the process we went through with supervisor. So if you've done through that, this is pulled from Eden's job review for her position. These yellow portions are what her old jobs were and how they were placed on the matrix. The leftover portions are additional duties that are being done by these two employees. So, not currently being compensated.
Okay, so then my recommendations then are that we first approve benefits manager job description adjustments, including salary adjustment from column A, column B, step 7 for our non-union exempt matrix for the 23-24 school year contract and thereafter. And then approve the recruitment manager job description to change the human resources generalist job description, including salary adjustments to column A to column B, step 7 on our non-union, non-exempt matrix for the 23-24 school year contract and thereafter.
Which page?
The one you were just on. The summary page. One of these. I'm just gonna look at the costs associated.
Am I interrupting your thought process if I, move to approve the benefits manager job description adjustments?
Yeah, do I have a second? Seconded, any further discussion? Is this for one, Jack?
Well, I guess the presentation that Liz just went through incorporated both of the discussion for both of them, so that satisfies me, but it looks like, because of the way it's presented, we need to do two separate motions.
Just a whole question being, I know we have 4 departments, asking that we add additional positions. And all the other AA.
That's something that we'll take a look at as we review. We're gonna do a general review of positions in the business department, HR department, as the year progresses. But this is what we're going to do for right now, is to adjust these two.
Public comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sue, how do you vote? Any opposed? Motion passes. Are you willing to make a second motion?
I'll do that. Approve the recruitment manager job description as presented.
Thank you, Jack. Do you have a second? Ursula, and any discussion?
If we can just, present it. Just for,
Yeah, that's that, yeah, that,
Okay.
yeah, that's in the motion right there. Yes.
Clarification? Further discussion? None. Any public comment? None. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sue, how do you vote? Opposed? Motion passes. Moving on, public charter schools, high school.
So, obviously, House Bill 549, allowed us to create, public charter schools. As you guys know, we've had very little time to, put this together. By the time the application come out and by the time it's due on November 1st, talked about it a little bit at our, last board meeting. We've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes. We're just basically be going through the bill, bouncing ideas off of, other folks around the state, taking a look at, what benefits does a public charter school have? And we've had a lot of great ideas out there, and I think, through this avenue, it allows us to be able to put some of these in motion. And so on the high school side tonight, Michelle Payne's gonna talk about the Flathead Pace Academy, and then, Brad Holloway and, Alan are gonna talk about the Rising Wolf Charter, and then we'll talk about on the elementary side. We know there's still, a lot of, questions that we have to answer. The application is due on November 1st, so, we're gonna continue to flesh some of this out, but what we're looking for tonight is, I guess, a motion for you guys to allow us to submit an application for a public charter school, and, we'll continue to work on it, basically throughout the year. If we're not ready to go, there's also provision that's in the bill that allows us to push it out even to, another year. But they're all ideas, we've talked about as we've moved through this transformational learning. So, I would like to, have, Michelle Payne, present first, and then you guys can ask any questions and get all your questions out of the way, and then, Brad and Ellen will, present, and then we'll go on to the elementary.
Right. The spirit of the charter bill really asks us to come up with ideas, things that find needs that we're not currently serving in our public school system. And that is what we have done. And at Flathead, our idea is for what we're calling the PACE Academy. And there's two components to the PACE Academy. The first one is the opportunity to deliver core courses in a flexible manner. That while most kids get through core content in a 90-day semester in a single class period, some kids can either work faster or some kids need more time. And the spirit of the charter bill, one of the tenets is on flexibility. And so what we've designed is a structure for core classes in the middle of the day. And so those would be periods 3, 4, 5, 6, or 2, 3, 4, 5. And classes would meet at a scheduled time, but there would be flexible pacing to that. And I can speak to the launch academy that I had the opportunity to visit in Utah, in Cedar City. And this part of it, the core courses, came directly from that. And I will admit that I was a skeptic. I'm like, well, how can you do core, how are you gonna do math, and how are you gonna do English if it's all flexible? But I can tell you that I was able to see it in action, and kids were scheduled at a certain time, but man, they were doing all different kinds of things. There was small group instruction, kids were working together as a group. There were kids working in pairs. There were some kids working individually. There were some kids not even in the classroom because they were able to work at their own pace without the teacher there. And then there was also the teacher working directly with one kid. And so I was able to see this flexible core model that I felt would work well in our school. So in the PACE Academy, you're gonna have this block schedule, so that's what you see in the middle there, periods 3 through 6, and A, B, C, D, and E, right? This is just kind of how we modeled that there. And so a block means that kids are gonna have more than 50 minutes, they're gonna have an extended period of time, and they wouldn't meet every single day, but they would meet every week. Okay? So the courses are there in the middle, and then you see in the morning and then later in the afternoon what the other component of our charter proposal is, and that is for career development. One of the things that led us to this is the fact that currently, out of our senior class, we have around 20% of kids finish the semester early. And they do so for a variety of reasons. One of the biggest reasons that I see, because they all come across my desk and I get to read about why kids are graduating early. They will say that they finished their requirements, they have a job that they want to move forward with, that's the most common reason. Sometimes kids will want to start college early, that's another reason. But that career piece seems to be, kids know they want to get going, they want to move forward. I've also had the opportunity to sit in a number of advisory councils through the work that Mike Kelly has done. Right? We have an automotive advisory council, a woodworking trade council, heavy equipment operator, automotive, and these folks in our community, time and time again, it doesn't matter the industry, they all say, we have jobs, we have good paying jobs, we don't have people to fill those jobs. How can you as a school help us connect kids with these career path areas and get them started so that we can fill the need here in our community? And so the other component of our charter is this career focus, right? So we're going to be seeing kids doing an internship or doing some sort of a career project as part of their learning there. So our charter model combines both core classes and a career focus for students. Our charter, you might have noticed, is 10 through 12. We feel like we do a good job of bringing in our freshmen, supporting them, providing SEL. We do all kinds of things. We have an academy structure. We really like how we bring kids. Our kids at Flathead come from 11 different partner schools of varying sizes. And that's a big transition for kids. And so we feel really good about what we do at the freshman level. And so our charter proposal is for grades 10, 11, and 12. Because we feel like that's where it fits the best. Questions for me about?
Can I just basically jump in, we talked about the career projects and basically the internship. So one thing that, Michelle and I talked about is that, well, what about the pre-engineering student, that wants to be able to do something a little bit different? So I think that this model would open that up for a student. So, possibly in the morning, they could be taking some running start classes up at Flathead Valley Community College, or they could be taking some other running start classes online or doing however they want, be able to finish some of those core classes. And again, you know, the core classes that are embedded in this are competency-based, is exactly what Michelle talked about. So it doesn't necessarily equate to seat time, so that they can move through those classes at a little bit different pace, and then be able to go out and maybe do an internship, you know, in the afternoon. So, you know, there's a lot of different options, and it reaches out to a lot of different students. And again, you know, taking a look at, you know, the whole concept of the public charter schools is trying to open up those opportunities, you know, for other students. And I couldn't agree more with, you know, Michelle, taking a look at this grade 10 through 12, because as you guys know, you know, that 10th grade year is probably the toughest on students, and that's probably where we have our biggest dropout. And so, you know, if we're able to give them a different avenue to allow them to be able to move at their own pace, and as we continue to talk, you know, voice and choice, you know, for them to be able to move through, you know, then if it's good for kids, then it should be good for our school district. And I think that that's really important. And, you know, the other thing is, you know, we have a huge homeschool population out there, and that's the whole idea behind the charter schools is, you know, they want a little bit more of that flexibility. And I think, you know, as you will see tonight, you know, that's where all the charter schools are. So, you know, we're not just looking at, you know, students already enrolled in school district number 5. It's, you know, we're looking at students throughout the Flathead Valley, and then, you know, other components of it. You know, it's possible, hey, we could be getting kids from outside of the valley. So I think that's kind of the uniqueness of some of these charter ideas that we're proposing.
I guess I'm curious about how you put together your schedule with the blocking, and with the internships and the career projects in the beginning of the day and the end of the day. Would it make more sense to combine those together? I guess I was just thinking, if you left, or you started your morning in an internship, you have limited time, because then you're able to get to your block classes. Would it be easier if you moved the whole block, either to the beginning of the day or the end?
We talked about that, and
Okay.
some of our community partners want kids for internships in the morning. And, you know, I think, yeah, we talked about that, and I think the way we have it there, it leaves the possibilities open on either side. It could be, right, if you think about a senior in the PACE Academy would have far more time, because most of their course would be done, and maybe they're, you know, so they would just probably be doing their English and their government. And so they would have far more room, right, to kind of flex it either way in the morning or later in the day, compared to a sophomore who's gonna have more requirements and limited time. But that's a great question, because we talked about that, and, you know, we do have some businesses that want kids in the morning. And if our cores are in the morning, then we're limiting the possibilities for internships for kids.
What impact does this have on our teachers? And are we gonna have to hire more teachers? Are teachers gonna be able to accommodate a slow learner and a fast learner, making the same curriculum work for everybody? Like, how does this impact our teachers? I don't see anywhere where it says how it impacts our teachers.
Good question. We feel like this would be part of a current teacher's existing FTE, right? So it could be that you'll have a teacher teach, you know, 4 periods of traditional, regular Flathead High School sections, and then a section here. And, part of, you know, having to figure out that, and I'm not the power school wizard, that would be Andrew Steiger for Flathead High School. But looking at, so it, you know, a teacher would have a flex schedule, basically. Just like now, we have some teachers who teach part-time here and part-time at Linderman, right? They would teach part-time here and part-time in the PACE Academy. Is how that would work. And, you know, one of my biggest takeaways when I went and visited the Launch Academy School in Utah was the hardest part about doing this is having to kind of keep tabs and have a clear eye on the kids who are struggling, right? And you need a very systematic approach to supporting kids who are struggling. Because the kids who are on track, the kids who are accelerating, you know, they're gonna be doing well, they're still gonna need our support, but it's the kids who fall behind that are gonna need the support. So structuring, and I see my role as supporting teachers in learning how to set up that intervention structure. Because a lot of the teaching methods that we're proposing here for a flexible core class work, we learned how to do during COVID, right? My science department, they're really excited about this because they said, hey, we know how to do short video lectures, we know how to set up labs, and man, wouldn't it be cool if kids could work flexibly through the pacing of a year-long science class. And so there's excitement among the teaching staff. This is a direction, flexibility-wise, we know we wanted to go, right? We did our little summer school pilot last year. We dabbled in this. And I would say that overall, the teaching staff is supportive. They're a little bit nervous about the work to be done, because while we know it's work we wanted to do anyway, we're just gonna have to do it a lot faster than we thought we would. But it's not impossible. We are going to use our early release Wednesdays. We're moving into some flexible team time on early release Wednesdays that's gonna align with this course development.
So with this program, this would be something new we'd be implementing. As far as costs that would come with this to implement the program, I'm hearing you correctly, we're not anticipating any actual additional costs. We might just have teachers get some of their pay from general fund dollars for reading, writing, arithmetic, but then they would get some of their funds from the school within the school to make their full salary. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes. In our model, the one challenge is with that career internship project piece, right? And so you'll see a need staffing-wise for that, because one of the 4 administrators in the building cannot do that. Mike Kelly and all that he does for the district cannot take this on. And so we see that increased need and increased staffing on that career side.
And so can you tell me what is the cost associated with that? That this would be something new and different and additional?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'm just going to.
No, that's a great question, and it's in the staffing budget. If you go up on that spreadsheet, right? Making our best guess at what that person would be, like a career coordinator is what we gave that title. Teacher on special assignment, or it could be more similar to Mike Kelly.
So the only true additional cost is an $80,000 career coordinator. All the other costs on there are costs that would just be coming from a different fund that's made available to us if the public charter school option is accepted.
Correct.
And not even necessarily, so, if you take a look at that and you take a look at within, it could be a teacher on special assignment, so somebody, within the CTE field basically could move over and teach into the PACE Academy, and if you take a look at that bill, so, we get, base entitlement, so, with that, but you have to hit a minimum enrollment, and the minimum enrollment is 41, so you have to have 41 students to get that base entitlement. So on the high school side, the base entitlement is $274,000. So, with you're starting a charter school, you get that base entitlement, and then what's that?
If we have 41.
If you have 41, yeah. If you don't hit 41, you still collect the A and B.
Right.
I think next year it's a little over $8,000, so, and then there's the decrement though, but it's basically around $8,000 for each student, and you start over, on the A and B count of that, so it's an entire separate entity. And so if you go through it, take a look at, the budget that, Michelle has calculated, and again, this is in 3 weeks, we have a lot to flesh out, so I'm not saying, hey, here's where it is, and here's where it's gonna be, but, with that basic entitlement, taking a look at the enrollment, those are Michelle's projections up there on where we would be, and I think, what do you have at the bottom of that, Michelle? Sorry, I don't have it.
Oh, well, with
The change in the base, right, if you go down to the bottom, I think it's a difference of, we come out, like, if you scroll just to the bottom of that, bottom, 66,000 to get. Right?
But, so I just want to make sure I understand, because I feel like we at Kalispell Public Schools, have been doing an exceptional amount of work and activities and transformational learning and things that we have done, and that we have been doing with a legislature set budget that we get funded 80% for, and that's only for reading, writing, and arithmetic. We're doing reading, writing, and arithmetic, and all these other transformational, wonderful activities, and athletics and activities and all this. We were doing all of that with an 80% reading, writing, and arithmetic budget, right? So we're ahead of the curve. We didn't wait for the legislature to tell us that we should be doing this to do it. We implemented it, and we've been implementing it with an 80% budget. And we are facing a really dire situation this year, and we are looking at having to make significant cuts. I also know in 2 years, our legislature might change their mind on this, and we might not have funding for this in 2 years. And once we put programs in place, it's really hard to take them back. So, you know, putting all of my cards here on the table, because I kind of operate with it like an open book here, but I look at this and I go, we're already doing the things that this charter bill is trying to get us to do. And there's things that we can do more, of course. And so if there's an opportunity like you're describing, where our teachers who are getting paid out of our 80% reading, writing, and arithmetic, we can actually have some of their costs be paid out of a public charter additional funding, I guess so-called expand the pie of the funding of our school. That will free up more 80% reading, writing, and arithmetic dollars to do other things, to provide transportation to all of our activities, to do things like that. So I love the idea of all this. My biggest concern is what is truly new and additional that we're biting off. Granted, we're going to get money for it, and we're hoping to have a surplus at the end of it. But I just know that if the legislature changes its mind in 2 years, are we going to be having to scale something back? And it's always hard whenever you have to cut any types of programs. So as I'm seeing this, there's really only $80,000 cost item. Really, and only if we get this approved that we would undertake that cost, correct?
Yes, yes, and for me personally, where I see our internships expanding and the work Mike Kelly does, our internships are soon gonna outgrow Mike Kelly. And so then what are we going to do, right? How are we going to meet the needs of the kids who want this work-based learning experience, right? And this is my answer, is, hey, here's one way we could do it.
Yep. Yeah, and right now, we as a school district are absorbing that cost because we see the value in it, and we're doing it with our limited funds. This is just a way to expand the funds available to provide this and expand, translate to better outcomes for our kids. Thank you.
Yeah, just an additional.
Sorry, help me out.
Just some additional information. At MCEL, they had a legislative panel, and they were all Republicans, except the one who was the Democratic nominee for the superintendent of public instruction. And this is what they were pushing. This is how they wanted to see education advance in Montana in the future. So I don't really have any concerns about them pulling the plug on it in 2 years or 4 years, because this is where they want us to go. And so, and we actually, Matt could talk about a little bit more about this, but when we talked to Lou Jones, we met with him in a panel a couple weeks ago. Again, he talked about this. This is what they wanted to see in the future of education in Montana. This flexibility, this ability for students to improve their proficiency and move on, and of course, career-based and work-based.
I just want to revisit a couple things you said. The first one is you're absolutely correct. All of these models that you see tonight are things that we can do within existing legislation. This does accelerate in pockets some of the ideas that we've had, and then you can get groups of staff that are ready for this type of learning environment going into this school. The finance side of it is a little trickier, and so what this has revealed to me working these budgets is that it's really hard to staff a school based on that 80% funding and the A and B. So you'll notice the A and B when we get to the elementary is lower, but it's the same concept, right? The only real new money that's on the table is associated with either new students coming to the school versus existing students. Okay, so if we start any one of these academies or charter schools, and you have existing students that just change models, that's not gonna bring in new funding to the school. So we need to attract, yes, this is intended to be a different model that is for different types of students or different type of children in our community, that this would be a better fit for. So I think the creativity here, this plan, what you'll see from Glacier, and KMS, and then also our elementaries, is trying to fill that niche of what else is out there that could be delivered to our community for the students that are outside of our system. That's goal number one, right? And then being receptive to that feedback from the community of how can we get some of our kids that are not in public school attending in a model that they would prefer to attend in. So that adds actual new money to the budget. The other thing that you're gonna see here is this basic entitlement. It's up here as this 274, and that is achieved, and that's that same 80% threshold. You get the 80% if you meet that number. So here for the high school, it's 41. So if you are able to enroll 41 students in the program, then you get that 80% funding, and that's also new funding. But outside of that, outside of those two concepts, there's no new funding coming in. That's what it's tied to.
So I just want to make sure I understand that 24 that we're talking about is new funding, or it's just funding shifted?
No, it's new
It is
because
truly new
each
funding.
one of these charters that's being presented tonight will be their own entity. There'll be like another school, and each school gets, if they're approved, and if you get 41 students, you get that base allocation.
And it could be 41, and we get that funding even if it's 41 students of our current Flathead High School students.
Yeah, it'd be 41 students in this program, and then where that 41, just to pull that thread a little bit, right? So if it happens to be 41 of our current students, that's just 41 students we're not collecting A and B for that we currently do, but the charter program will collect the A and B.
So that's what I'm getting at. So is that new money then, or is that just shifting money?
No,
from-
it's new money, so you have one building facility, but
Yeah.
now you're getting two basic entitlements for that building facility instead of just one.
Okay,
You're getting 274 twice.
so that is new money that would not be in our budget, even if we have the exact same amount of students at Flathead High School this year and next year. That would be new money if we put in this charter school. And say we attract other people, into our system who aren't currently in our system, then that would be new money, because then there'd be A and B entitlement.
Right.
But
Okay,
if you don't hit that 41 threshold, you don't get basic entitlement.
we don't get the
You
274.
have to hit 41 to get that.
How do you feel about recruiting Flathead High students?
Well, yep, if you looked at my projections, right, if we can get a section of sophomore, a section of juniors next year, 50-ish students, we'll be golden. Yeah.
I think all this will be clearer also after you hear from Glacier, and then middle school and elementary, you'll see, some common themes emerge, and then the finance discussion kind of develops too.
I have a couple questions about, what this would look like for students. The first one is, would a student enrolled in the charter school have access to all of the extracurriculars of Flathead?
Yes,
Okay,
yep,
great.
that's in the plan.
Okay.
And that's one of the questions in the application.
Great.
Yeah.
And if, let's say that their career part happened in the morning, they didn't have all of their time filled with, they were able to get all of their core classes done in time, would they have access to any extracurriculars within Flathead? I'm thinking specifically like music students, could they
Yeah.
take it? They
Yeah, and that's what, we thought about that very thing, right, is, okay, so you could have a student in the PACE Academy who says, man, I really want to take choir,
Okay.
right, that student would still be able to.
Okay, and I will say to the group, like, one of the reasons I asked that is because of Jen's question of when you recruit these kids, and I think it's much easier if they don't have to give up something that they may really enjoy, that they know they are probably only going to do in school. I think that that makes it a much easier sell to try something new, to be a part of those other things. I had another one and I lost it.
Did you have a question? Go ahead first.
Yeah, a couple questions for you and then a couple general questions that maybe are the superintendent questions. On that decision to not do this for ninth grade, one of the places where there have been some students having some things with the academy have been science and math, accelerated science and math students, it being not quite where they are. So if there were such students, would we consider making exceptions for allowing them to just do it in the core class, in the core sections, get up to speed? Or are you absolute on the ninth grade? No.
So you're asking if a ninth grader could opt into a flexible?
If they were in some situation.
Yeah, I mean, we would certainly look at that, right? And math is, you know, where it's easiest to assess and determine level. Yeah, there's a lot of, you know, fine tuning questions that we have not vetted entirely, right? But, you know, the spirit of the plan is flexibility for kids, right? So I think we could make it work.
And, you know, we have had people come to this board and, you know, a discussion nationally about, you know, our high school is just becoming a pipeline to push people into trades, or, you know, do we want to make sure we keep academics? Do you have any concerns or see any community concerns or pushback that we should be cognizant of?
I still think, and I've always believed, we serve our college-bound kids well through IB, right? How many kids come back from college and say, man, IB, I feel like college was easy because I was prepared. And so we wanted to be careful to create a plan that wouldn't step on the toes of things we're already doing well, right? And I also, on the flip side, think we're serving our most at-risk kids through Linderman very well, too, right? And we don't want to step on those toes.
This board, you have Linderman.
We'll go to Flathead and then we have Glacier, and before, we'll have a motion, and then I'll call for public comment.
Can we get Alan up too, because I think it'll help answer
Yeah.
some other questions.
Yeah, let's
too.
hear about the other, yeah.
And then we can go
Oh.
to that.
Wait, I had like, well, my three general questions that might need help, Ellen, are space requirement, you know, we're all four schools, you know, where do we put these kids? On the, but it's a general concern, are we taking space away where we need it? On the A and B, again, that also becomes a space issue. You know, we say, oh, we'll attract new students. Do we really have time for them? And the other question that's going to be kind of for all four of these is, Jen's looking at if we don't get the 41 students, I'm looking if we get over our expected numbers. What are maybe it was on there, some of them we got late. What's the methodology for how we'll choose between them? Do we?
Right, and the application asks you to address that, right? And the way it is done is through a lottery system.
We would do lottery.
Yeah. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. We, you know, remember, right, it would be for our core academic subjects, that would be teachers that we already have and classrooms that we're already using, right? And additional, right, we feel like we have a little bit of wiggle room in this building with some space that we could convert to classrooms. Been talking about that for a number of years, but you'll see just directly above us here, in our new construction, 4 traditionally sized classrooms and 2 small conference rooms and breakout spaces. That really lends itself well to what we're planning, right? Like, and who knew when we did this in 2016 that we could come up with something that would down the road be very useful. And so we're pretty excited about the space here. And, you know, our school capacity technically is 1,900 kids. I don't know that we would want that. It'd be really crowded. But we do have some possibilities for classroom space to grow.
No, I'll wait,
But the other specific was, so you feel that Mike Kelly's is district-wide now, no longer just Flathead, is becoming overwhelmed with their job, and there's in Flathead specifically, there's also Kristen Bay, who is career and college counseling, and you feel it's both, but that's
Right.
still not sufficient.
Well, I just think the number of kids requesting internships will continue to grow, and Mike's done a good job, but I just see that direction.
So mine is specifically for this school. It seems as though when you were describing it, that there's there's a specific type of career that you have in mind. That idea of careers and internships could go very broad. It could be somebody who's a writer or an artist. Are you going to propose it to potential students and families in the community in like the narrower sense of maybe those woodworking, machining kind of careers? Or, would it be open to everybody? And if it's not open to everybody, would that be potentially another future charter school? Like, I know it would be a smaller amount of students, but let's say the students.
Hey, Ursula,
Yeah.
so I kind of addressed that a little bit, and, when I talked about the engineering student and had this conversation with, Michelle too, I see it for any student, it's open for any student.
Okay.
If you want to go into the medical field, and this fits a little bit better than the traditional sense, it allows for that flexibility. So, we're just not saying, hey, this is work-based learning, so it kind of goes back to, the Center for Career Discovery, this is career discovery. And whatever career you decide to go into, if you want to go into, the 4-year institute or a 2-year, this is for you, and, we want to be able to provide that flexibility for any student.
Like with the culinary program, and also all of those things would equally go into the lottery. So all students that wanted to participate in any career they were interested in.
Yes, I just spoke to the ones that we already have partnerships with,
Okay.
just because we already have that relationship.
So, I know we're gonna have a lot of questions as we go through this, we have a lot of questions too, so, but these guys really put a lot of time and effort in it, to be able to do this. So Alan, Stanfield?
No, this is thorough, I appreciate it.
Oh, and Brad, you coming up too?
Yeah,
There's a lot of work.
Excited, we're really excited.
And Alan's the scheduling guru, so,
Brad is scheduling here, so that's
he's
why
gonna
we
be in the Delaware
we
here.
were out together. Just a real quick background, I was a teacher in Oregon and Washington, both at the times where those states went through similar processes for legislature approving charters. And there, rightfully so, is some angst in community and staff about what it means to be a charter. The reason I believe in this charter, and I want to make sure we're clear, is 549 and 562 are two different bills that were passed by the state, and 549 includes this board as an advisory over the charter school, and it exists as a public charter for that community under the advisory board. The 562 does not do that. That is, changes rules of teacher licensure, no advisory board overseeing it. So there are groups in our community that will start charters under the guise of 562 as soon as it's out of litigation, and will pull kids from our schools. That is a reality that we have to be prepared for. And so 549 gives public schools an avenue to do some things. Yes, we are already doing some of these things, but do it in a way that competes and allows the students that want these opportunities. And the other thing I would say is a kid can live in the charter for 1 year. Their senior year, they could be in the charter school. They could be at Flathead High School freshman, sophomore, junior year, and the same is true with the model we built. They could be in and out of the charter within a grading period and within a school year as their individual learning plan takes them into that place. So that's important to kind of have some of that background information about how the charter could function when it exists under the advisory board of an existing school district. So, you have ours up there?
Yeah, where do you want me to start?
I think just go right to the model of the X1.
Got a link?
It's the blue, green, and gray. And now I'll come back to this one, but right there. So X1 is what Montana Western calls their block scheduling. And what Montana Western does, Brad and I sat in a Zoom meeting with their provost, and I am familiar with it to some degree, because at Whitworth, we had one class for a Jan term. We had a fall term, spring term, you take one class in January for 3 hours a day, and that was the only class you're in. We had the same thing in May term. And so I love the opportunity to take one class, very intensive. It allows for no other distractions of other coursework that you're studying, and you just get through an entire semester's worth of work in a shorter period of time. That's basically how Montana Western functions all year long. They call it the X1, that means experience one. So in talking to them, we really felt like when we look at some of our high failure rate classes, they're freshman level classes, English 9, Earth Science, Biology, Algebra 1, some of these freshmen that come to us, 7 classes in a school day for an entire semester is a lot of transition for them to juggle their first semester. And so by allowing this X1 to either be part of their day or their entire day changes the amount of class load that they have at one particular time. So if a kid chose to be in an X1 block for part of their day, they could be doing an English credit for 24 days, finish it, move on to a science credit for 24 days, finish it, and then move on to math or technically an art elective that chooses to be in the X1 block, finish it, and they would end up with the same amount of credits at the end of the semester, but they were never juggling those 3 classes at the same time. They had that sheer focus on one intensive learning experience. We feel like from a teaching side, one of the things we heard from Montana Western was it provides some opportunities for more intensive experiential educational learning opportunities. They get to know their students very quickly because of the blocks of time that they're in, so it provides a relational classroom environment. Even though they are leaving in a quicker time, they get to know their students very quickly and in depth. And it's, for the kids, they're knowing 4 teachers at a time instead of 7 teachers at a time. So we just like the model. We don't know, there's certainly lots of schools nationwide that are on block schedules, but we don't know of any that are on a block that changes and then is different. So this model, whether it hybrids into part of their day, would still allow a kid to take advantage of electives that we know wouldn't work in this X1 model, like music, like the ag program. They could still be involved in those things and live in the X1 block. Or if a family decided to, and their individual learning plan wanted to be in the block all day, they could be in the charter full time, and they would be in a block in the morning, a block in the afternoon, and every 24 periods, they would end up with 6 classes at the end of the semester. Right on track for graduation, they'd actually be ahead of schedule. So that's the model we've chosen to highlight our chart with, is the X1 model that Montana Western utilizes. It's a little bit different when you start hybriding it, but we know that there's going to be students that want potentially a block in the morning, a block in the afternoon, or a block in both. So that's kind of the framework of the flexible schedule that our traditional school doesn't allow for currently, that this would facilitate. Couple nuances, because we've always operated in the scheduling world that kids sign up for things in February, and based on those sign-ups, we build a schedule that facilitates their course requests. We don't feel like this is in opposition to that. So depending on how many kids, after we market what the X1 would be, how many kids sign up for it, we don't even know that necessarily we would need a lottery. We had to write in that we would use a lottery if we couldn't fully facilitate all the requests, but we feel like by doing the February registration and knowing how many kids want a block for part of their day or all their day would then allow us to see if we could adequately staff it with teachers that want to be teaching in the block. And so therein would lie the work that we would have to be doing between the approval process, the registration process, and then the schedule building of it to know that it would fit within our existing model. But we we believe it would serve a cohort of our students very well by allowing them. And one of the things Montana Western said is it specifically fosters kids that struggle and have learning disabilities because it gives them that opportunity to focus on one class at a time, much like the success that we've already seen in our summer school model. Our summer school model operates 3 weeks at a time. They focus on one class. Sometimes it's a complete retake. Sometimes it's a completion of the things they just need to get done. But our success rates in that model is very much what kind of got us thinking about this in some capacity because of the success that summer school has had. Versus, you put that same kid in a single period credit retrieval all semester where they just meet 1 hour a day, all the success rates in that fashion are horrible. And it's the same thing being used. Montana Digital Academy is being used in the summer school model, but when they can work on it uninterrupted all day for 3 weeks, they get through it. When it's one class a day for a period, they very rarely get the work done and get that credit completed. We feel like it very much meets the goals in goal 2, 3, and 4 of our strategic plan. When you start to look at things like improving interventions for students, reducing class loads, lowering F rates, more meaningful in-depth mastery of learning. We do feel like for an upperclassman, this could facilitate more meaningful work-based learnings because they would have longer chunks of time if one of their blocks was an internship. And we built in, knowing that we're losing the ESSER dollars that have funded a lot of our summer school retrievals, we built in 24 math guy over there is 72. A normal semester is 90. How's a history teacher? Math was not my strong suit. We built in these expanded learning opportunities, which could be used in a variety of ways at the end of the normal grading period. Credit completion and recovery of the classes they were just in the block. So they don't, it's semester 1, they don't wait till June to do that extra learning reassessment. They do it then, right there, and get to the point where they're earning those credits. It would facilitate job shadows and internships for a full day or a half a day, potentially in a shorter window of time during those in-between periods. And it provides basically an expanded learning opportunity for more mastery for those students that want to work on special projects, or potentially travel for credit, experiential ed, field studies, all types of opportunities that could exist in the in-between when they're out of that block period. So if you want to just go up to the gray, those are our rough breakdowns. And the date ranges that would function within our existing Kalispell Public School calendar. Our program within a school would have no new operating costs. So to the question that was kind of, basically, we plan to utilize existing staff, infrastructure of Glacier High School, and we view this as potentially protecting up to 5, 6 teaching positions within our building, and that for us is a good thing. Did I miss anything, Brad?
I am not an expert in the brains of teenagers, but we have several very qualified people here. Is that 2.5 hours a reasonable time to expect that most teenagers could stay focused?
We asked that question of Montana Western, and I have lived in a world where I did teach a 100-minute block, so not quite that long. You obviously will take some natural breaks, but they have found, and from a pedagogical standpoint, more benefit to the longer increased time. So the more you reduce those transitions of a bell ringing, getting things up, actually facilitates better learning, more in-depth learning experiences, and for specifically, they mentioned their science department, more opportunities to take labs into more in-depth, because you're not worried about so much lost time to clean up and set up. In their art department, they found they have more time to stay in their craft longer, which produces better mastery of some of the skills they're hoping their students learn. So I do think there are some subject areas that are better lent towards the block versus others that wouldn't. But then again, that's why we're not forcing those into every curriculum area.
First, I'd like to add to that real quick. I think anecdotally we've seen already this year, with our art block that we've had, the interest the kids have had in that. We've had a math block for years. We have times where the ag folks do exactly this kind of structure. Our outdoor ed block has done some of this, and universally kids have said they really enjoy that. They'll even tell you just the time of, gosh, you get everything out, we get started, and then I have to put it away. And so, yes, I would agree completely with Alan said, there are some classes that this is not ideal for. Western doesn't offer languages in this format. They don't offer languages at all. So I would sit here and tell you that I don't believe our language program would fit in this. I think music's another one. So there are places where it's not ideal, but that's the idea. Students can choose some of it and then still have the opportunity to be involved in some other areas.
Also, just add one other thing, is that sometimes one of the complaints and one of the things transformational learning has tried to do is break this one-size-fits-all for all kids. And so, just because there's certain things like music or, what was the other one you just read? Languages that this wouldn't be good for, there's kids that never take either of those, that shouldn't be bound by the schedule, that's needed to employ those things that happen in your traditional model. So we're providing in our charter the opportunity to break free from the traditional schedule in ways that both students and staff have the desire to do so.
As I've seen the schedule, they can do both, right? And I think part of the beauty of the larger block schedule, if we're trying to attract new people into our district, maybe homeschoolers, would like that there's an opportunity to learn science in one of our science labs. They could dip in and enroll with us in science. That expands our ability to offer this. Maybe they might find that they like other things that we have to offer too. But it allows them to naturally just pop in and pop out as they need if we have this intensive block schedule. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yeah, although I will argue with Matt a little bit, we're not doing it to attract more students to Glacier High School. Glacier High School is pretty much already full, but that could be a side benefit. That's not our motivation. The base entitlement for the charter would provide us that $270,000, and that is the financial incentive, but there's certainly the opportunity that kids will be drawn to this that aren't currently in Glacier High School, but that's not necessarily the motivation behind this idea. We feel like there's a subset of current students that would opt into this when given the opportunity, just like they have with the ILP that we created in math last year, just like the outdoor block. But this would be a more impactful to a larger scheduling thing that is different.
And again, you're not seeing any, like, two additional new costs. So, this provides us the flexibility to have more funds to provide. Hey, question, when they graduate, do they get a diploma from Glacier High School or Flathead High School, or is it the, in front of me?
Pace or Rising Wolf.
Wolf Rising.
The bill says they get their own graduation. I
Our
read it.
understanding is they would be able to apply for a diploma from that. We would look at it right now, kind of like we do with Linderman, where they can get a diploma, apply to diploma.
I'm going to add a couple of,
Linderman students sometimes will graduate both with Linderman and. So they can have a Linderman graduation, but at the
20 or 22.
What was that?
There's a 20 and a 22 credit diploma, so diploma, they could be inside it. But if they get a 20, that's usually
I was just thinking, we could, the high school diploma from Pace School, that people are gonna be like,
says it in the bill, if you read the bill.
Oh,
It says they get their own graduation and own diploma.
So
But they can also
be a Glacier High diploma.
Correct. It's two separate entities. We've established that, so it will not unless they, my understanding is, get all of this, yeah, right.
Got it.
I wanted to add one more piece, I think, to the flexibility that's afforded, and we're talking about, you know, doing a single course at a time for a shorter amount of time and things like that, but I think this structure also formalizes and promotes just the flexibility in general, because a student could be within this and live in a world that has a Monday, Wednesday, Friday concurrent enrollment course through the college and a Tuesday, Thursday work-based learning experience. So while we're talking about, you know, maybe a science class for 24 days and health class for 24 days or whatever, that's not the only scenario that we could get into. And I think we could talk about infinite possibilities, but what this does is also, I think, recognize and promote that we believe in that flexibility, and it creates a structure that everything can live under. So that we're not dealing with all of these individual circumstances in, you know, kind of just one big pool. We're putting them under this charter and saying that flexibility, your AM is the flexible time, your PM is at Glacier High School in the traditional kind of schedule, or vice versa, or all of them. I think it gives us a place to have everything in it.
And that's where, so going back to that other question, if they are doing both this and at Glacier, and they meet all of Glacier's requirements through doing this, they could also feasibly get a Glacier diploma.
Correct. We have a couple of other questions, I think, that are important, and I think they've been addressed, but students can live in both worlds. They can participate in activities at Glacier High School. Teachers can live in both worlds. Chris had asked a question about impact on teachers, and we believe, we're not looking to work outside of contracts or anything along those lines. We believe we can make this work within that structure as well. I think there's a lot of changes that come up in these things, but we're not looking at blowing everything up. How's that? So we believe we can make that work, and we've got staff that have expressed interest in having their day look a little different from day to day as well.
Excellent job as always. I really think that this is what charter schools are for, you know, trying out something, you know, in small scale and seeing how it works. Fabulous. As you touched on a little bit, you actually have done some work on this model for the last couple of years. Last year you did a outdoor and math block thing. I guess I just wanted to get more on that. How is it going? Did it work this year? Are you feeling good that this is the way to go?
I'll let the outdoor guru.
Yeah.
It's a slightly different model than what this would be, because the block lives for the entire semester integrated across curriculum areas. But like, so for example, today, they were out at Lake Mary Ronan walking through a forest fire rehab habitat with a DNRC person showing them the aftermath of what a fire does, and so very hands-on science learning going on. Kids, it's a pretty good sign when the juniors that are in the program say, "Can we take this again as seniors?" And you're like, "No," but we're glad that you're liking it this year as juniors. It's possible those teachers could promote a second block with 3 different classes integrated that would build on it. We're just still in phase 1. So the art block's a little different. That was created as a 2-period block, so it wouldn't be quite as extensive, and it goes the whole semester. But I think the point is we kind of pushed or allowed for some teachers to push the envelope on what their periods can look like, and they don't all have to look the same. So 2 of the ones that I know are very interested is it's tough to do some meaningful cooking in 50 minutes. And so the culinary is kind of starting to look at some of these things and say, how would this longer block facilitate more in-depth things they could work with in the culinary, even if it meant we're going to be meeting for less time, the things we could do in that 24-day period might actually lead to a better mastery of learning than the 50-minute period a day for the entire semester. So there's some certain areas within our CTE world that are intrigued by this model and want kind of to delve into it a little bit more.
Thank you. And again, for both, or for 4 high schools now, I guess, that we're looking at, a Flathead student who liked your program more, a Glacier student who liked Flathead Pace more? What are the opportunities for, how is that gonna work, or how available are we gonna make it to?
I guess I would just say, I think, Rebecca, we've supported kids in making those transfers, I guess, throughout the district as they've felt like that's better for them, and I don't see that changing.
Actually, with the financial questions, or maybe, are we charging families in the Flathead district?
Charter schools are open to anybody across the state.
Perfect.
So, and then along with open enrollment next year, so. Yeah, and we don't charge tuition, so, and you can't charge, for your charter school. So it is that open enrollment. But one other thing I want to touch on too, so you were on the calendar committee last year, and we talked about it a little bit. So Heather was on there, and, you know, we talked about, that alternative schedule with the midterms and, extended school years and a little bit in shortened semesters. We have the autonomy to be able to do this, and this is exactly what they've done, within the schedule. So, you know, we don't have to say, hey, we're all gonna follow this schedule. You know, through these charter schools and through the flexibility that, you know, that we have, through transformational learning, you know, we're able to do that. No longer seed time, it's proficiency. And then they've also added in, you know, the, either the extensions or the interventions within it. That's what I really like about it.
High school board. I have another first one. What would the student, like, what kind of student would you think would be, who you're looking for this? Would it be anybody, or is it people who maybe aren't thriving in the current model?
I'll use the math ILP as an example that was new last year, where it's the self-paced math that Anthony Lapke proposed and is teaching right now. You see both. That class affords kids to move ahead that are fast and want to push themselves and try and get done with their credit faster than the normal semester allows. But it's also meant for that student that it takes longer for them, and the teacher didn't have to leave and take the rest of the class to the next unit. They still get to stay in that unit till they've met it. And so I could foresee something like this attracting both ends of the spectrum. And that's where it's on, I think, the teacher to be able to provide those differentiated learning outcomes based on that individual student in the block.
I like the personalized learning. That's
And
that's
don't
really what
forget
it's about, is learning to each student. And that gives you the flexibility.
I was gonna say, don't forget that they're on AP, so that it's, AP just will take tests at the end of the year, so these advanced kids can still be in the higher, whereas IB is a little more funky. Rules.
Okay. Anybody?
Can I ask that one more question? Someone who's far better at math than me, looking over towards, based on what we think is actually new, and I'd like to consider both Flathead and Glacier school within the school models, and put those two together. We say, what are truly new expenses that we're going to have to add on, what we already do, and what we anticipate coming in, if we get the 41 students that we need. Can somebody give me a rough net delta of what we expect?
They had that up there, it was $66,000.
It's more than that.
Estimated, we just
Oh,
built,
that was for Flathead.
we couldn't run it without 45 kids as a minimum.
Gotcha.
So the minimum that would draw with A and B and your base entitlement would be a $638,000 budget, but that's kids that are already there. That's new.
So we're talking 274 new.
Yes.
274
Yes.
for each high school.
Yes.
And the only true additional cost at Flathead, I understand, is the $80,000 career person, and the true additional cost here at Glacier, we're actually not.
I can speak to.
So let me follow up on that. 275.
550 minus 80.
Okay, great. So what are we talking about? Was that $470,000?
Mike Kelly's job is unsustainable, all the internships.
I know, I spend a lot of time talking to him about my internship.
Yeah.
At our law firm, and that's just one kid.
Yeah, and so he's out there doing his best with the 40-some that we had, and I think you guys were even more, so as that program and continues to involve more and more internships, that could mean it.
Yeah, one more, sorry. Do you feel like there will be a detriment to the public school if you have a charter school taking away resources such as the, computer lab or other resources within the school? So a quick Google search says that's one disadvantage, is it takes away from the public school and those kids as opposed to the charter school.
Well, I guess I would address it this way, Krista. We, with a school within a school, we're using those resources probably somewhat interchangeably.
Okay.
We have a current writing center that we could use for students that are in the charter at a certain point in time and still allow.
So there'd be lots of coordinating.
So I think where that gets to be a challenge is where you have a charter that's in an external facility type situation. But I think with school within school, we're still gonna take advantage of resources. I know you gotta make some clear boundaries and some budgetary things that you've gotta make sure you do, but we've already got, I really go through and count Chromebooks and do them out that way. I don't need to do that.
We get the 41, we recruit, we get the kids in there, we get the base entitlement of 275. And if we get 50, 60, 70, 80 kids, the toggle up per capita.
Base entitlement stays the same, and your A and B would just be ticking up in the charter.
And that A and B is not new money, or is,
It's
if it's new students, it's new money.
New students.
New money.
If it's not-
There is a small caveat, I don't know if we want to get into this, but.
Sure.
Huh?
Two periods.
Yeah.
You should say it.
Okay.
I said you should say it.
Oh, with the charter, so the base entitlement A and B starts at an amount, and then as you have more and more students, it goes down. So you're starting that over again at the top with your charter. But you're kind of getting a little bit more of a pie boost because you start that count over again, and then it drops.
Okay, yeah, that doesn't.
So you are getting a little boost in A and B, even though they might not be new students, but over this type of budget, I don't know the exact dollar. That was looking at.
Just want to bring this to light too, what if you don't hit the 41?
You would push it a year and try and get the 41 next year.
Anybody willing to make a motion to authorize Flathead and Glacier High Schools to submit their applications for the? So moved. Thank you, Ursula. Do I have a second?
Seconded?
Thank you, Rebecca. Any further discussion? None. Public comment? John, you've waited so patiently. Will you please, would you like to come up here? You got 3 minutes.
Seems like charter schools just drain money.
It's really hard for people online to hear without the mic on.
Okay.
It's on.
Oh, it is? Oh, sorry.
But it's sad that you all aim for the bare minimum. Shouldn't be what you're going for. Most people getting the bare minimum. You should be doing this for the smartest kids from elementary school on. Put this much effort into making more education. This is the least. How you get the same amount in less time, I don't understand. Telling kids, the smart kids, they have IB in high school, doesn't do them any good in middle school, elementary school. There's clear differences. These are the kids that need help too, but so do all the other kids. They're basically just making a system where you said technically they did the bare minimum. As far as I'm concerned, tell local businesses to train their own employees. I believe it's Plato that said that's the purpose of an education. Train employees for a local business. No, not what it's for. Internships, they should be paid. Internships exploit students. always have. You can do better than this. Just gonna suck money, and it will not have better outcomes. We already have alternative schools. I don't see why we would take money away from the other schools. Bare minimum shouldn't be the target. We should push kids to do more. It doesn't help society. It's okay for a welder to have read poetry. It's okay for an auto mechanic to have studied science. I'm okay with living in that world. So raise the bar, quit lowering it. We've been dumbing down education for over 50 years. I lived through it. It's awful. Try to raise them up. Don't lower the bar. But that's what it is. That's all this is lowering the bar for more kids. Thank you.
Any other public comment? Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I want to say thank you for the administration. I know that's a lot of work in a short amount of time. It's great to see your ideas being different, but yet both are goals.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
How do you vote? Any opposed?
Nay.
Passes. Okay, up next, we have public charter schools, elementary.
Okay, now that you got all your questions out of the way, darn it. So Mr. Hornby from Elrod is with me tonight, so I'll start with the elementary side of this. We'll just start by talking through vision here, because I think this is the most exciting part. When we start talking about elementary students, there's obviously a difference between the flexibility that you have in a traditional setting with high school students, when you schedules for transportation, when you look at schedules for overall structures and how you treat older students versus younger students. So this design is really to capture students that aren't currently in our system, or students that would prefer a different model. The model is a blended online and in person, but it can be at the parent's discretion. So it's available full-time in person, but it's also flexible to be whatever the parent wants. So if a parent is currently homeschooling their child, but they would prefer to have more interaction and still some time with their kid at home, they could be 2 days a week on site, and they could be 2 days a week with their child at their house. And we've called this a community, a Kalispell Community Partnership Charter, because we're trying to partner with the community on 1 day a week to be doing something in the community, something in the field, and make that a staple of the program, but also partnering with parents. So in this schedule, you'll see where we've built in opportunities for teachers to meet with parents and help them understand the instructional strategies that we'd be employing for each unit as they're delivered. So it's more of a side-by-side with a parent in how we design this educational experience for their kids. We have a couple sample schedules here. I know it's hard to visualize it in words, but this could be what a school day looks like for a student. Mr. Hornby created this. Do you want to talk to it?
All right, well, first of all, I want to say that, the idea of a charter school, which was brought up about 2.5 weeks ago maybe, it was never something in my vision of, possibilities. My 30th year in schools in this valley, and I, have been proud to be part of a public school. And so when this came about, really, what it did for us was open doors, and you guys heard that from the high school. Just opportunities that we've been dreaming about that now we can kind of be pushed a little bit more into. And so this schedule, this could be, so the other thing in the last couple weeks is we created about 8 or 9 different schedules. So you think about this between now and when this project needs to be kind of, brought to fruition, one thing we want is to get, you know, a lot of staff involvement in the design of it, and we really have had very little of that. And then, of course, parent surveys and, just seeking what the need is. And so what we did is we met with some, homeschool instructors or private school instructors, and just to find out what parents wanted. And, as we look to, you know, encourage other enrollment opportunities for families. And so the schedule is a mix of kind of traditional kinds of things, because you can't get away from teaching reading or math. I mean, those are critical components of every day. But we expanded the blocks 3 days a week so that we can do other opportunities, which we've talked about in the past, and we are doing some of those things now with the extended classroom. So we had a community partnership day where, and this is could be lots of different things, like a partnership with businesses or an agency, either business or like an agency like Glacier Institute or something like that, and then having an outdoor education component to it as well. So really, because we've looked at so many different little varieties of schedules, we haven't narrowed it down to any one thing because we need parent input and staff input.
I would say to, the public comment, I think it was John, that resonates with me. And I just want you to know that we're constantly trying to push the bar to make learning, more enjoyable for students and staff, and also accelerate the trajectory of our learning progressions for students. And so we're working through, the 4 essential questions of education with all of our staff. This creates an opportunity to really drive home some of the most aggressive or fundamental ideas that move kids along. But on the other side of it, it does open up an opportunity for parents to have this a la carte menu that, at first gives me a little bit of anxiety, because I want all parents to make the best choices, or at least what I think are the best choices in a full boat menu for their kids. And I think some parents would choose some things that are just a little bit. And so if you look at this schedule, when you start posting sections, and so if you think of, for young students, kindergarten, first and second grade, if you offered 3 levels, so don't think about grade, but if you offered 3 levels of learning that were on a continuum, and you had the same teacher teaching those levels, kids could progress or stay as long as necessary, and they'd have that consistency of the teacher potentially for multiple years, working with them through those levels. So the learning progression would be much quicker, it'd be much more in depth. The benefits are great. And then you combine that with a parent that might want to come beside their kid and do some homeschooling, and you're working with that parent, you're increasing the capacity of that parent and maximizing that time that they have with that child. But also, I would want them to be in all of these blocks. But this option allows the parent to be a part-time student. If you can imagine a parent currently homeschooling their kid, then they say, when is the science math block? Or when is the ELA block? And then they sign up for that and they participate in that. They wouldn't have to participate in the other. There's some limits to, how we count A and B. So it's traditionally like 2 periods a day counts for partial funding, and then up to 4 periods a day on that traditional time block schedule is full-time enrollment. So, there's lots of those details to get worked out, but this does open up that avenue for parents to have more voice and choice over what they're picking for their students to be engaged.
And this schedule right here that you have there, that's one of many different additions. You can see in this version, we had different grade levels in the buildings, but the main thing is to note that, there's some students would have traditional options, and then some students would be within block options in
to the budget side, it's not so friendly on the elementary. So, and the big difference here, Jen, is we were talking about that 274 on the high school. In the elementary, and I'm not sure why the legislature does this, but there's a couple big differences here. One, first, for us to get to that minimum student count at 71 in the elementary, and your base entitlement at 80% is about 59,000. So, and then you start adding into this budget spreadsheet, and I think we need to go back and forth and really dig into these details before we give you a firm answer on what is the net benefit, because there's a lot of detail here in potentially double counting some of the things that we're already taking in. So in this budget spreadsheet, it has things like the quality educator payment. Now, the detail here and that Alan was speaking to was he's preserving positions, and this could be a way to preserve positions. So if you imagine this budget without those people in it, you wouldn't be collecting it, because those people wouldn't be here. But if those people are here because you're running a program, then you are collecting it. So that is new money. But if you're using existing students and existing staff, you're already collecting those funds. So it's actually not new money. I think there just needs to be a level of detail and oversight, probably by Denise here, in nitpicking some of this, and so it's really clear of what constitutes new money that's associated with the program and not. But if you're viewing this charter at school as a totally independent entity, this budget spreadsheet works really well. And I think Michelle took a version of this from Missoula, and then we've worked a version of it that fits the elementary, and it's detailed, but it also purposely omits a few categories. Like, we did not budget anything for clerical, we did not budget anything for nursing, and then you get down to this facilities, and there's nothing in there for facilities because we're using that school within a school model. So when you look at the efficiencies of a charter school, you have to view this as there's efficiencies here for us because we're doing the school within a school model, but if we were doing this outside somewhere else, we wouldn't have those same luxuries. So they are benefiting from the already existing structure of the public school. Also filling a niche and potentially bringing in new students. There was a question at the beginning about space. Do we have the current capacity? We're sitting a little differently in the elementary. We have two schools looking at this right now. That's Elrod and Russell. They currently have our two smallest student populations. So there is a little bit of flexibility in those buildings. But overall, we don't have a lot of extra capacity at the elementary sites. We have a few classrooms. And I would say there was a conversation about daycare, right? And it was like, hey, we have a space at Edgerton for the daycare. Why aren't we adding more classes? And somebody was upset that we didn't have a class. It doesn't make sense for us to add another class at our already biggest school and then go over accreditation standards and have to hire more people to fit that. So the design and build of some of our spaces, like Edgerton probably shouldn't have been built with that many classrooms because it costs us more money to actually fill that space. We can't afford it, right? But we can afford to structure it with the way we've structured it now. At the same time, Elrod and Russell are structurally too small. So when you staff that with a full staff, you have more staff per student ratio. So adding a charter school that, if you could figure out the scheduling, how it works with the block scheduling and using different spaces at different times, it could maximize that facility. That was a lot.
Yeah.
So as it's commented right now on the elementary side, I'm saying two schools within a school, is that?
Yeah, how we've divided this up is we'd probably do a K3, and we went back and forth, probably K2, maybe K3 at Elrod, and then maybe a 3-5 at Russell. And the reason we looked at that is if you had third grade be that flexible grade, and it depends on the learner continuum, kids could move and work as a third grader with at level 4 or 5 if they're ready for that transition, or they could work in those other levels. So that'd make a good logical split, and you could use it to balance numbers.
Would we then, so they would essentially go to, say, 3 years of one school, and if they want to stay in this, and they would go to a different school. And maybe this completely blows the model out of the water, but would it make sense to centralize the charter school or elementary? And, I think that's what's done in other, any school or a charter school, and the entire school is that.
I'll let Jeff chime in with here, but I don't think we could afford it, because you would lose your basic entitlement for your regular elementary school, and then I don't think either space is big enough to house all of them. And so, you know, that school within a school model is where you benefit, because you have a charter school on, in addition to, and then also, I think there's this, I don't know if we want to jump back into the discussion about neighborhood schools and boundaries. We do want to protect the integrity of that neighborhood school as much as possible. This really stretches it, so it would be the design that we've talked about, is having those blocks that are leveled, and then you also have a traditional schedule running in harmony with it. So you'd have a traditional kindergarten, traditional first grade, traditional second grade options for parents. So you're not displacing the LROD parents that don't want to be a part of the charter school. Yeah, you had something?
That's what I was gonna say.
Okay.
When we talk about high school, it's easy to see how kids can at their own pace, because students can take whatever class they're at the level at already. With elementary school, at least as far as I have seen, even with, I don't really see us ever moving them forward grade level 5. Somebody was to progress through these levels quickly and then want to enter public school, or say this is all public school, if they wanted to enter a traditional elementary school, that's something that has been considered.
I think this can be really hard, honestly, because I think the advantage of shifting away from the factory model, where we batch kids by age and then we put them in a grade level and then we move them on with other kids that happen to be their same age. Breaking that traditional model is really challenging, and then putting them back in that traditional model is really hard for that teacher. But what we're proposing does allow you to push those students and those students to really have an opportunity to pursue what is right for them at that next level of learning. Because if they're put in leveled experiences, they can progress really quickly and rapidly. It just provides a really unique opportunity for some of those more advanced students to really be pushed. And the instructional model, it's hard to describe this without seeing it, but we're really talking about something different happening in classrooms. So when people get worried about, is personalized learning an IEP for every student? No, it's just how a classroom gets facilitated is different. Instead of a lot of sole teacher, whole group instruction, everybody getting the same lesson, there's a clearly defined standard and progression, and then students are able to define what it is they need to know and be able to do, and then they can demonstrate that to the teacher, and then they move on. And a teacher might be facilitating a learning pathway for all different kids, but the conversation is with individual, unique conversations with students, instead of focused on completing an assignment that was really written for the middle of the road student in the class. But if you have a kid and you're accelerating them through a program like that, it would be hard for that kid to transition back into a regular traditional classroom. And when we've visited schools that do this and we've seen it in action, they've had trouble when they launch it, and they've had kids that experience, you know, one classroom where it's competency-based, and then they transition the next period to a class that's traditional. Kids have been frustrated, and that has caused some animosity and angst, where kids are like, be clearer about what you want me to know and be able to do, instead of completing this assignment. So I think you'd frustrate students.
And so one of the things it seems like I have seen is that parents are more likely to homeschool young to public high school. Would we, right now, a student has to be a certain age to start high school. Is that what we would still do? Like, would we just ask them to continue basically progressing as far as they can until they are at that age, or what would we do there?
So, I don't know if this totally answers it, but, the idea I have in my head of that is, I go back to, it was 2003, I was the principal at Swan River School, and I sent a typed letter to the homeschool parent families. I don't know how we would necessarily structure this part of it now, but 20 years later, but, I sent out this letter and inviting them, parents to consider public school for what their need is. And Matt kind of hit on this earlier. You know, when we met with the, private school teachers, one of the teachers said that, when she was homeschooling, she never felt confident about how she taught math. So that was just last week, we had that meeting, but then 20 years ago, when I sent the letter to families, I had parents come to me and say, did the exact same thing. I struggle with teaching math, and my daughters, these twin daughters at the time, can they come and be part of your math program? And I said, yes, that's great. The only thing I asked at the time, you know, 20 years ago, was that I said they need to be here for at least 2 hours a day, because I knew I'd get half A and B. At the time, that was the rule. I'm not even sure what it is right now, but I said they need to be with us for 2 hours a day. And so those two girls came and they did math, and then they had PE, and then they participated in music classes. So they were with us for almost 3 hours a day, and we got half A and B still. And so we got the A and B money, plus we had that benefit of having those students be part of our program, and they benefited because they weren't getting the instruction that they wanted. So is that kind of what your question is?
No. My question is, if a student has met all of his proficiency, would we allow them into the middle school or the high school earlier than we normally would?
That's a big discussion, but typically that's not the pathway.
Okay.
Right? And so it's you know, you can be doing advanced work with your age level peers. The difference is, are you getting the same assignment as your grade level peers? And so it's easier for us to imagine math, right? When we were going through school, there were some kids on an advanced math track, and they might have been taking algebra as 8th graders. And that's pretty common to think about. But what we're talking about is creating that type of opportunity for all content areas. If there's kids that accelerate at science or language, why are they subject to the same assignment as every other kid in the class? And why would the only solution be to promote them to high school to get a different assignment? But I think you can outline, and the idea with personalized competency-based education is you've defined what success looks like and what competency looks like at each level. And then once the kids reach that competency, you move them on to the next level.
Okay. So we would keep them challenged amongst what their traditional grade level would be, and just keep challenging them more and more and more, not move them into the high school. We would challenge them there, and then if they moved into the middle school or the high school and they were already advanced, we would just put them in the advanced.
Yeah. So the budget side of this isn't quite as friendly. You get to the bottom, and we're talking about this as an independent program, right? So how does it work with the money you collect in A and B and the base entitlement, and then all of the costs associated with it, because you have those teachers working with those students, and it actually runs a deficit of about $288,000. Yeah.
Can you roll up to the expenditures under personnel and help explain the math? Because when I'm looking at, teachers, I see 2, 2, and 2. And then I see 12 over there on the far side. And then when I see 0.8, but I see 1 on the far side.
Yeah, so I'll back up actually to a little bit higher. So what we're looking at is up to 240 students, and then I calculate it at 2/3, because we're going to have some students maybe pick a half a day, and some students pick a full day. And so we just ran a number of 2/3 of that maximum capacity number. And then We get that beyond 71 is where that 58 comes from, on that column. And then the 58 number is what I use to calculate for anything that would be attached to A and B. And then when we get down to what Jack was talking about with the administrator, the one represents just one person, and it's 0.8 of an administrator. So we could have some split assignments. It might actually be 0.4 and 0.4 if it's two different sites.
So the 100,000 represents 0.8, it doesn't represent one.
Right.
Okay.
It represents 0.8, in this case, of one person. But if it was at two sites, it could be a 0.4 and a 0.4 of existing administrators.
So the 12 doesn't represent what's described over there under, assumptions, it's based on the student count.
It would be doubled for two sites. That's what the 12 is. So it's the 6 that's represented on the
Okay,
left,
thank you.
doubled, yeah. I could have been clearer on that. And this one was a little tricky because and Peter's more confident than I am, but I'm not sure that if we had two different sites, that the same district can collect the base entitlement for two different sites. So that's something I need to dig into, because when I read the legislation, it looked to me like a district in totality could collect this amount for elementary, this amount for middle school, and this amount for high school. So I just need to get a little bit more educated on that. So I only included it one time because that's what I was confident.
High school side where.
That's why I said
Is that
Peter's
good?
more confident than I am.
Sorry, I'll put away on that.
No, it would be, we're the same problem, just to be clear. It would be two different charter schools.
Yeah.
Because they'd be serving two different populations, but there is a grade level split, and they're doing the same thing for the same grade level at two different sites. I just don't know how that splits up in the spirit of the law and the spirit of state funding. It gets complicated.
It's on page 18 of the bill that, we'll get through it though.
The main point with all this though is that for tonight, we're asking to be able to submit the application just so we can continue to explore it really, because we don't know a lot of the details.
Point, so if we proceed with submitting an application on the road and we realize, you know, the outcome, the educational outcome for the kids, the population might be what we're, it seems like there's, I'm kind of curious from the professional, do we think the educational outcome is going to be something new, different, better than what we're doing and provide more opportunities? Because, you know, we have a lot of stuff in our high school that are providing things along these lines, but in our elementary school, seems like it's more something new, right?
I should clarify, I feel very confident in the educational outcomes that this model would promote. My concern is that parents would only take advantage of parts of it. My hope would be that parents would take advantage of the full schedule. So currently, we have elementary students show up and we get them for the entire day, right? Hopefully this attracts students that are currently not receiving any of these services, and they would receive some of it, but when you present more of this a la carte option, we could have parents choose just a piece of it, and my hope would be they choose all of it.
And then on the cost side, of it, looking at this as a administrator on here, is the new administrator that we're gonna hire, this is the administrator that's already at Russell, is going to wear two hats. Is that
Yep.
right?
Russell and Elrod, Jeff and Bill, they would be wearing two hats.
Funding for their pay would come,
Yep.
you know, our general
Yep,
fund.
so that would be savings, and if you think of the comparison, you know, their buildings are about 215 students. Edgerton's over 500, and so, you know, it's definitely, not going to, they could take on that capacity. So we had a conversation with them.
then can you clarify what would be not funding that is shared, that is, like, I see that this is funding that's being allocated here because the school is here, but which parts of it are new expense?
It goes back to, I think Alan did a nice job of talking about the new students, and at Glacier, they're not necessarily looking at new students, but if it was keeping the current, number of students, it could keep the number of FTE. If we fast forward without some model like this, right, and we're not trying to attract new students, and we're budget cuts, there's gonna be a reduction in staff. If we had a model like this that could also add new students, then it might not be a reduction in staff, because you could have those students, or those staff here. The new funding is pretty minimal at the elementary if we're not talking about new students. If we're not talking about new students, it's this 58,962 or 963.
And there are no new expenses for the elementary model, or we do need more teachers or more?
No.
Okay, so no new expenses for the elementary model. Okay.
Well, this is a big difference, right? The 58,000 versus what was on the high school side?
274.
274, and then the A and B calculation is different. So at the elementary school, we only get $6,307 for A and B, and at the high school, it is about 2,000 more. So when you start compounding those numbers, that makes up a large difference.
Just a tiny little clarification, that 71 number for the elementary district size and the 41 for the high schools, those are full-time students or 2 half-time students?
The
It's not
equivalent of,
71,
the equivalent of full-time, yep,
okay.
yep.
So the potential new students coming from homeschool, if they were to hop into this often, if they only chose to take the first block, say you've got, you know, a kinder and a first grader block, they only take the first block, where does that leave us?
They'd be about halftime, they would be calculated about halftime, because that first block is the equivalent of 2 periods. It's an ELA, reading and writing.
But could we
Block.
still count them as
Yeah.
part of the 71?
Yeah, they would
But we
count
need
as half of
142.
a student for 72 to 71. Yeah.
So my thought on this one, and, you know, going back to the high school ones, it's obvious to kind of see a population, that one, those ones within the school, we're kind of already doing it. I also have the same concern that we heard in public comment, not want, Rebecca had mentioned it, I don't get kids into the workforce. I do have concerns that I think that with this elementary one, any amount of help is good. I want all of the kids in the community to get the best education they can, and if some time in the school is improving that, I like that. But I do worry that the piecemeal part of it could potentially undermine that overall vision. I do have that same concern that you mentioned, and it's fairly strong. I feel like we have, you know, goals and standards that our teachers are used to striving for, and that they are used to seeing, proficiencies and benchmarks that we are going for. And, you know, I worry with I like the choice of being able to take a little bit, but I worry that with the choice of being able to take just a little bit, that it will be hard on others. For instance, if they have somebody coming just for reading, and they can see, like, this student is struggling in math, and what do you know, it just doesn't, that choice is kind of a double-edged sword, I guess.
I'd say you just summed up the last legislative session. really, it's been talking about parent rights and parent choice. And, you know, on one side of the table, you've had people arguing that, man, schools want to dictate this whole day for my kid, and I don't want my kid to participate in health. I don't want my kid to participate in whatever. I want my kid to do this. So this option does put that out there of giving a lot of power to parents to choose. And I think what we like about it is it gives us an opportunity to work with a parent. You know, that's why we settled on the name, or at least I did, with the community partnership, is we want to partner with more people in our community, and we want to do a better job of listening to parents. And, you know, a big part of that application was this timeline that talks about gathering information from parents. And when we talk about the electives opportunities for these kids, like what do parents want to see, and what type of community engagement and activities do parents want to see with their kids? So I think that's a challenging question for our state and our community, not just this room.
If we run out of deficit, where does the money come from?
Well, Denise and I touched on this conversation today. There's still a question about where the first batch of money comes from, because schools collect the A and B. The budget we get this year is based on last year's numbers. So we're running some projections here. We don't know if the state's gonna, you know, give the charter schools the funding up front to get through the first part and then do a fall count and come up with those calculations. So that's part of what we need to come up with. But what I'm guessing would happen here is that we would get to the fall count and we'd have a pretty good idea where we were on this indicator. And this is a separate entity from the district. So we would need to make the budget fit, and that'd be a reduction of that staff or some sort of reduction in the program.
So it's not like we would be taking money from our 80% reading, writing, and arithmetic for our.
No.
It's a separate school.
That's
It
my
has its
understanding.
own
Budget,
budget.
yep.
So.
They can't cross-contaminate.
Exactly.
It's all its own.
Unless we have more questions for Jeff, I'd like to let him sit down. I'll shift gears into middle school.
Jackson, very patient.
Clarifying question, which I assume would be the same answer for high school, is this is to make an application and get approval. Does it then come back to the board to say, yes, this is what we're gonna do, as meaning approve a budget for it? Because you've put a lot of effort into it. There's still more effort to put into it to understand the operational aspect. Is there a point where it comes back before the board, for the board to say, yes, we're gonna go ahead with it, or no, we're not gonna go ahead with it, once it's been approved as a charter school?
Well, I think it's all part of the process, you know, this is just the first step. It's the board to allow us to take it to the public, Board of Public Education. And so then they have to approve it, and then it comes back. If they don't approve it, then we could come back and we can make some changes to take it back again. But I think it's a process, and, you know, at some point we'll have to determine actually whether we're going forward with the elementary, going forward with the high school. It's just new to everybody, except there's a very few schools in Montana that have, under the old laws, have established public charter schools. And there's only like one or two in the entire state.
Now, with this handy timeline of things that have to occur, so if our application was approved, that would be known by January. In two of the bullet points in March, says charter contract must be signed by the presiding officer of the board and the public charter school governing board. One thing that the governing board charter is required to have an additional advisory board to be made up of board members and community members with an background. And then secondly, a public charter may not operate without a charter contract approved in an open meeting by the board. This would occur in March.
But Jack,
Okay,
to
so
your,
that's additional to this.
yeah, this is just to get us, part of our application. But Jack, I think to your point is, I think once the public charter is approved, it's a 5-year charter.
Yes.
So in March, if this board makes the decision to ratify the agreement, then I believe it's a 5-year charter.
Right, but what my point is it comes back to the board again to say yes or no.
Yes, it does.
This year in March.
Yeah, so we're just making application now to be approved, and whether it's for the high school or the elementary, and that we can still say no so in March, we'll have some idea of all of our budgets. I mean, not a conclusion, but we'll have the understanding of the direction to see how they all fit together, because we'd be approving, in essence, four budgets, 2 high schools and 2 elementaries, a charter in each one. And we have to see how that all fits together. So even though March may be premature, because typically we're not looking at that until July, we will need to have some kind of preliminary numbers to understand all that. And if they don't match up, then it may be, we might have to say thanks, but no thanks. Am I missing that?
Nope, that's right.
Okay.
I thought, I was under the understanding that the board had to be in place for the charter school before they could apply. Is that not correct?
Mm-mm.
And then, the other thing is, how is a board selected for a public charter school when it's a public entity? Is it selected in the same way as an election, or how does that work for charter schools, or how are they selected?
It's not the same function as a school board, it's an advisory board.
Oh, okay.
That would be selected by a rising rule charter that would include essentially 1 to 2 board members, 1 to 2 community members, 3 to 5 members, that then serve as an intermediary between this board and the charter.
Makes sense, thank you,
It's an advisory board for that purpose.
appreciate that.
I guess just a clarifying question. Our elementary schools, and it would have been for the high schools as well, but if our principals are not full-time, that doesn't affect any of our funding or our compliance. Like, it's okay if they're not full-time.
We have to have principals that meet the accreditation standards, so based on a number of students, you need that equivalent to FTE, and we are in compliance.
Even if we
Yeah.
We're not doing Smith.
I'm gonna shift gears here, just go to the middle school, and I know we're already 2 hours and 15 minutes into this meeting, so, you're well educated on charter schools at this point. The middle school model is pretty similar to the elementary model, except that they're grouping ELA, social studies, and science. And the idea is those 3 content areas be grouped together, and then those teachers would decide how they want to use that time. So they could be spending, all day doing one content area with a group of kids, or they could be doing a more of a traditional structure and shifting between different content areas. They've also built space in the schedule to talk to parents about offering different types of electives during the day and using the space at KMS. So for example, if they wanted to teach a wood shop, they know the wood shop's open 2 periods a day. All classrooms at KMS are open 2 periods a day, so they could schedule to be in the wood shop 2 periods a day and facilitate, that elective during a period of time. Probably like Glacier High is gonna do in a certain amount of weeks, because they'd be doubled up on the period, so it wouldn't be, for a full semester, they could do it in a shorter period of time. Pretty exciting model. I like how they've included a lot of space to work with parents. And the reason it's called the Rocky Mountain Academy is they want to make real connections to our natural environment in the Kalispell area. They also have a vision to leverage what's going on inside the community and then connect to it. So if there's in the fall, and it's by season, if there's things going on around the harvest, they're going to tailor their curriculum to take advantages of what they can see in the natural environment, or through cooperating community members to make part of the learning happen in the field. So that could just happen with the environment, but there could be like hunter's education training, right? That could be offered as the elective during that season or during that time. A lot of creativity here, and I think the model fits really well, and the 3 teachers working with that 60 students is a good balance. It plays out better on the budget sheet, just because of a little bit simpler structure. I used the 60 students, and the minimum threshold for the middle school is 21 students, and the base entitlement is right around 118,000, so that's about double what we're seeing in the elementary. So when you get down to we have about $130,000 to flex, and I'm not comfortable saying that's a surplus. I know it's categorized that way, but you don't know exactly how many students you're gonna get, right? So there's a big variable there, and I budgeted at the 60.
Because, you know, based so if this is, and we, if the cap enrollment balance the budget.
Yes,
That's kind of how it
yeah. So we can control how fast we grow on all of these charter models, because we can say this is what we have, and then if we hit that max, if we have 60 but we had 200 apply, then 200 go into the lottery system, but we don't have to serve more than 60. That's a good question.
Other thing to note financially is that 7th and 8th grade students are funded at the high school level rather than the elementary level. As far as, they get the 8,000 instead of the 6,000.
But sixth graders are not. Sixth graders are
graders are
funded
not.
at the elementary.
And with this middle school model, are we also targeting, trying to get kids outside of our district or outside of?
Yeah, and I think a lot of what you heard from Glacier in the benefits of having fewer teachers in fewer areas of focus is also a benefit to this model. So that's what you're seeing. I think you would see, I think there's a need for that in our community. I think we would see new students.
Oh, go ahead, Rebecca. So, actually, the reason I was late is I was definitely reading through this stuff. There was one spot where it did say, I think in the mission statement or something fairly early on, it said, you know, that outdoor component was one of the focuses. I didn't really feel I saw that throughout, pulled through, but you would feel that that's just because it was done in haste and that is one of the main, you know, to me, a charter school has to have a reason to exist, something it's bringing in that we're not doing. And what I saw here was that outdoor piece, but I wasn't totally sure how much that was a focus. And you definitely feel that that is part of what makes this charter school special and unique and different.
Yeah, and it's just hard to predict how much time, you know, those teachers are gonna choose to be in the field and how much time they're gonna be using the classroom time to complement that. So they could be spending all day on Wednesday, Friday, or Tuesday for that matter, in the field doing that. But it has to fit what they're teaching. But the main component of it is to leverage the natural environment as much as possible.
I see that we have also getting kids to school.
Yeah,
Or
is
is
the
that
short
something
answer.
that's-
And it really doesn't cost us any more for transportation because we're already running those routes. And what we've done in both programs, the elementary and the middle schools, we've said students could be here at the regular time. So when Jeff was presenting that schedule, there was a time in the morning from 8 to 9. There was more of a connection time with the teacher. But if a parent drove their kid to school, they would start at 9. But if a kid rode a bus, they would be eligible to start at 8. And the same in the middle school model. They could start their day riding the regular transportation all the other students ride, or they could start on a different schedule if that fit their family better.
So the transportation cost,
No.
because of the charter school, it'd just be paid out of the traditional, the administrative we're going to have.
Yep, same bus and same transportation funds and not connected to the general.
Because the charter schools are open to anybody, do kids out of district?
Oh.
All right, Matt, I'm gonna put you on the spot. You know, obviously you're our elementary. This opportunity and how it differs. Opportunities are available because of this. Obviously, there's budget and all that to figure out. But I mean, is this something that you would recommend?
Yes, I'm specifically recommending that you guys approve us to move forward with this. I think the next level of this conversation with both the elementary and the middle school is connecting with teachers and fleshing out a lot of these details. And I would not make a recommendation if I didn't think it was in the best interest of kids. Period. I mean, and I really do want to separate some of these budgetary conversations from what's best for kids. I think that if there is a struggle, it's the struggle with how we are connecting with students that currently are outside of our system and how we're building those relationships and partnerships and keeping an open mind and listening to parents in our community that, for whatever reason, have not felt like they've been listened to, or that there's been an option that appeals to them. And so this is a lot of new learning for us. But I don't question that instructional integrity,
Elementary only. Move this forward.
I so move.
Other discussion.
This is getting down the road, but ultimate authority.
That's actually where I was heading to, that I came into this meeting very pretty sure on the, high school, I'm fairly unsure on the elementary. And the knowledge that what we're approving tonight is just for them to make the application and explore it further, and that we still can decide if this is the right direction for the school when we see the full proposal in March, is informing my vote tonight.
Remember, the Board of Public Education has to approve it too, so
Yeah.
they might
Assuming
say
they-
no to us also.
Right.
Moved and seconded.
I have a quick question. Is there an elementary quorum? Oh, okay. I don't, how many does it take? I can't remember.
Four, seven.
Oh, okay.
Sue is online, I'm not sure.
Cool.
Okay. Elementary only, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Sue?
I hear all the conversations that I'm okay with moving forward.
I don't know if that counts, so it should be on your phone.
Motion passed. Moving on, policy updates. We're on the second reading.
This is the second reading of the policy on, administering medication to students. And as was explained last time, this deals specifically to, keeping a supply of Narcan and then administrating it if it's needed, and then who can administer it.
This says update. This says
All three.
you can vote after the second reading.
Yes, if you use them.
motion to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Lex. It's been moved, it's been seconded. Any further discussion? Any public comment on this? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The consent agenda, district-wide. Motion?
So move.
Thank you.
Second.
Oh. District-wide, it's backwards. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Consent agenda, elementary only. Any discussion? None. Any public comment? All in favor, say aye.
The elementary trustees out there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on, and we need a quorum.
Well, we have to do on the phone.
But she's not
She's
answering.
not answering.
We actually need her to say yes.
I'm getting hangry.
Yeah.
I have no discussion on the elementary.
Okay, I think you can call for a vote.
Can we order pizza?
Okay? It's been moved and seconded for elementary consent agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. Okay, finally, on to our work study topic tonight. Deborah, are you online still?
I am, yes.
For hanging tight with us. We are ready for you. We are up and ready for our superintendent search update.
Sure, and I know it's probably getting late for some of you, and I don't know that this will necessarily take long. Just wanted to update you on where MTSBA is on the process. And I'm not sure who has control of the attachments on your meeting, but maybe if you could bring up the updated timeline that I prepared. Nope. That's not it either. Let me see if I can share my screen. Oh, there you go. On the side there, you'll recall last time we had talked about primarily the deadline for closing the position. I know that there were some of you on the board that were advocating for that to be moved up from the proposed timelines that I had initially in there. And remember, MTSBA doesn't decide this. We facilitate the process with you. I did modify that based upon the input from last time and moved that up. So we would still plan on finalizing the promotional brochure at the end of November. We would plan on advertising the position first week of December. We would leave it open for about 6 weeks, which would take us to about January 19th. And then that would, of course, start the screening and interview process. So I wanted you to know that I did update that. If any of you have any questions or comments or want to see further revisions to that, and remember to, this is all sort of tentative at this point in time, but we will need to put in when we post the position, we will need to note what the closing date is for submission of applications. And Jack, I think you were the one that initially proposed to move it up 2 weeks, so you'll see that January 19th.
Well, on the right side, it says
2024.
January 12th, on the left side, it says the 19th.
They're not intended to match.
And we can make sure that those are aligned. I'm
But
not,
I'd rather see the 12th.
I didn't prepare that document on the right side. I prepared the document, and we can make sure that those align. I don't think it matters necessarily whether it's the 12th or the 19th. I did get a request from the Daily Interlake a couple of weeks ago about the timeline. I told Hillary that it had not yet been reviewed by the board. And would just want to be transparent with her in terms of any finalization or even tentative plans on that. But I think we can work through those issues.
Anybody has any anybody doesn't have objections, I'd rather go for January 12th than January 19th for the closing date.
Agreed.
Okay, Deborah, we'd like to move the closing date to January 12th, if we update that.
Sure, we
I
can do
like
that.
the timeline on the right.
That's on the timeline on the right, Jack, that you're pointing out.
Oh, no, I like the timeline on the right
Just for the closing position or for all of it?
for all of it.
So if, so with the one on the right, we close the position on the 12th, we screen the applicants. If we don't have applicants that we like and we reopen it, what is what's the like
Yeah, and you'll
alternate time?
remember that. Yeah, and that actually happened when we did the search in 2020. We didn't reopen it. We in essence extended the deadline for applications. And so we made contact with those that had already applied and just said, look, the board is interested in maybe looking at a wider pool of candidates. Encourage those people that had already applied to stay with the process. I think most of them did. So if that happens, and I think that was Ursula asking the question, we most certainly would work to extend that if the board feels that that is necessary.
And this is Ursula again, we would then stay though on schedule for February 1st.
This is Jack. I would think that we would know by January 19th the quality of the applicants and be able to make a decision the following Tuesday, which would be a board meeting day.
Neither of these show up.
Yeah, so the 23rd would be the Tuesday, and so I would think by the 19th we would know, and then we can decide if it needs to be extended, or if we or if we're happy with what we have.
And if we extended the rest of the timeline was moved down, we wouldn't try to like extend it and still somehow extend that timeline.
Well, if we extended it from the 12th to the 19th, it would give us time to screen applicants.
Well, no, the extension is if we, on the 19th, for example, if we decided we didn't have qualified applicants, then we'd extend the we would, Deborah can correct me, I don't know if I want to say reopen it or extend the application deadline until, for another 2 weeks, for example.
To move it to the 12th.
Yep.
Yeah, so you can see how many,
And then at that point, if we feel we need to push it to the 19th.
Yeah.
I think that Jack is thinking that we'll need a week to look at, is that what you're saying, like give ourselves a week to look through the candidates?
Well, yeah, by the 12th, we'll know how many candidates, and then by the 19th, we should be able to determine the quality of the candidates. And then on the 23rd, we can decide, Deborah can help walk us through it, we can decide that, yes, we're good with the candidates and schedule interviews, or no, we're not good, we need to reopen or extend the application deadline.
Deborah has to put the 12th, right?
Correct, yes.
Due
That's the
date.
closing date for
Got it.
applications.
Okay.
Yeah, we can move that up to the 12th. We just need enough time. I'm looking at the schedule on the right. We need enough time between when the board decides on finalists, whenever that is, and the time that the board interviews, because during that period of time, we do extensive employment reference checks on the finalists. And I think even if you decided on the 23rd, even though that's a pretty tight timeline, I think that we can manage that in terms of employment reference checks by, for example, February 2nd.
My only thing I would say there is that I feel like perhaps because we're trying to do things in that small timeline, we could decide sooner. Like, if we're moving it to the 12th, then I feel like we could potentially decide sooner than the 23rd, would be the only thing I would put in there.
Well, the 19th is 1 week after the closing, and Deborah would need to get all the information to us for us to review. And I'm just saying that 1 week period of time would be sufficient, and that there could be, Deborah would have to help us of how we can say yay or nay on this, and then talk about it on the 23rd, which would be the following week, the following Tuesday.
I'm fine with it. I was saying, I'm fine with all of that, just if we needed a little bit more time between the 23rd and 2nd, to do it faster, but I see that it's at the board meeting on the 23rd, so it all sounds good to me.
And again, we do need a little bit of time between the time the position closes.
Well, we have two conversations going.
Sorry.
I'll stop. You guys tell me when you're ready for me to speak.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
So the one on the right is a that is part of the work session today. And we included Deborah's timeline in that. So I really think you guys need to decide on the right or a combination of. But for me, looking at this, when we're going to make an offer is a really important deadline, and if we want it to be the mid or end of February or the beginning of February is another important thing we need to determine tonight. If all went well round one applicant.
Well, and to me, both timelines kind of coincide together of a contingency plan of, I like the one on the right. I don't know if I like it because it's really detailed, but on the one on the left is also, if we need more time, we have it. So somehow we merge these two together. Yeah,
I think we can do that in built in contingencies, if you need to.
When would the contract start for the meeting?
July 3rd, July 1st.
July 1st. Regular contract.
June 30th.
Then, you know, if we're approving the contract in February, then we should work.
Deborah, we're ready.
Be that big of a decision.
Go ahead with your thoughts.
Are you asking for my thoughts?
Yes.
Yeah, I think, again, we can work with both the schedule on the left and the schedule on the right and merge those together. There aren't really a lot of differences, a week here, a week there. I think ultimately when we discussed this process, you had talked about getting somebody hired in the February, and I think it was more of the early March timeframe, but we can work with this schedule if the board thinks that this will work. And again, the thing that I just need to know when we're putting the draft promotional brochure together is, I mean, obviously letting people know when the position closes. So we'll go with the January 12th timeframe. I do think, and I'm just going to say this because you guys know the way I communicate, I do think that the work of the personnel committee and with MTSBA, we need to make sure that we're on the same page so that we're not producing inconsistent information to the board. I think that's important.
Looking over these two timelines on the one on the right, consensus across the board. Okay, that's where we're at, Deborah. We're leaning on the one on the right.
Perfect. And then Liz, were
Where-
you planning on going through, this part of the presentation or?
Do you wanna do the survey summary first, Deborah?
Yeah, we can do the summary of the survey. If you want to put it up, that would be awesome.
Thank you.
I'm making it a little bigger on my screen. So, I thought you had great participation in the survey results. You'll see there that 491 people responded to the survey. And you might not think that that's a lot. I think it's a pretty good representation of people asking them for input on the qualities and attributes that they want to see in the next superintendent. You can see the breakdown in terms of percentage of demographic that responded to the survey. So the certified staff at Kalispell Public Schools, of course, was the largest demographic. And then, of course, parents and legal guardians living within the boundaries of District 5, the outlying elementaries, community members, classified staff, KPS, admin, other, and then, of course, we had, I think, 1 or 2 students participate in the survey. When you're looking at, and you might recall that we asked on the survey, what were the 3 most critical functions that the superintendent would need to focus on, the new superintendent coming in. And in looking at the 5 functions that were identified, the top in order of priority, and this is not alarming, by the way, because I think there are common themes throughout the survey results. So help the community understand district challenges and issues. There were a lot of comments about failed levies and getting the public to better understand the needs and challenges of the district, short-term and long-term district strategies, planning and managing the district budget, working collaboratively with the community and problem solving, and then overseeing policy and planning for the district's long-term staffing needs. If you go down a little bit further, we asked about the attributes that people wanted to see in the next superintendent. And you might say, well, why did you cut it off at 80%? Because I needed to cut it off at some point in time. So we looked at the combined responses of when people ranked these on a Likert scale, and we took the very important and absolutely necessary, and you can see again in order of priority, someone who prioritizes a high level of integrity. That high level of integrity was a theme throughout all of the responses on the survey. You can see that at 97.35%. Someone who has demonstrated leadership skills, same thing. Someone who is an articulate leader who presents a positive presence that will increase parental involvement in the community support for the district, 90%. Someone who has experience in budget planning and implementation, 87. Someone who will be visible in the schools and the community, same thing, high 80s. Someone who has the ability to inspire creative problem solving and cooperation on the part of a diverse community and staff, 81%, and then someone who focuses on what is ultimately best for each student. And I'm glad that that at least made the top 80 percentile. And then we had open-ended questions, again, very positive response. 394 people provided their input on what was the single most important quality that is needed for the next superintendent to succeed. And again, these are themes throughout. I took quite a bit of time reading through all of the responses. And these are the themes that emerged, and you can see the themes in both that question and then in the question, the last question that we asked on the survey was if they had one question that they would or could ask of the next superintendent, what would it be? And again, you can see the common themes that appear in those two questions. One of the, and again, I would just tell you that in looking at all of the input, I think they're looking for somebody with integrity, somebody that is transparent, somebody that will connect well with the community and parents, a collaborative person. There were several comments about supporting the staff and effectively recruiting and retaining quality staff. So again, you can see common themes throughout here. I didn't attach the actual responses, and if you want those, I most certainly can give those to you, but I will need to go through and redact some of them, because remember, this is not and should not be viewed as an opportunity to malign any individual. And so there would be some level of redaction, but overall, I thought the results of the survey were positive. And I think you can take the results of this survey and incorporate those. Again, it's up to the board, but you can take those and incorporate them into the superintendent position profile. Any?
Oh, sorry, Deborah. I was just asking if anybody felt they needed to have the survey results. I don't want you to spend your time reacting them if we don't.
Honestly, I would like to see the survey results, but I don't think it needs to be an exhaustive effort. I think honestly, I would just need to see the original survey of what didn't make that 80%.
Right, that's what I would teach you.
What was not making the cut, because, you know, as we go through an interview and look at qualifications of a candidate, I'm very interested in what our community and what our teachers wanted to the survey think are important qualities. And this is one of the ways to, and also see what's. So honestly, I think it's simple, just that's the survey and highlight and whatever blue, the stuff that was 80%, and highlight the stuff that was not, and something else.
I can do that. I can modify this and provide you with the percentages on all of the attributes if you think that that would be helpful.
That's fine.
That's what they're looking for. Thank you.
And I guess just the comments, I mean, the comments are important, but do you feel like the summary here does summarize the comments pretty effectively, Deborah? That's a question, sorry, do you think?
Yeah, and again, I look for common themes throughout all of the comments. And I would say that these are the themes that rose to the top in terms of reviewing those comments a couple of times and saying, because there were, and again, you can see the alignment with the attributes and the themes and the questions. I mean, people really are interested in somebody that connects well with people. They want somebody with a strong financial background that knows, you know, how budgets in school districts work. And I was just listening, actually eavesdropping on your charter schools presentation. That was very good. So yeah, I think that it does. And again, if you want to see the actual responses, I can provide those to you, but I am going to go through and redact the comments that I think are inappropriate.
Very quickly, I am interested in the comments, but honestly, I'm interested in the levy comments. I think this is the first feedback we've had from community, teachers, leaders, whatever, on levies. To the extent there's anything in there about the levy, that correlates and would be helpful for this board in consideration of whether or not we're going to consider running the levy in the spring, and how we might go about doing that, and how we might have what kind of community partners we want to bring to the table, and having like a board work session. That'd be my only desire to see. Not for a superintendent.
There were a lot of comments about the failed levies.
Are those gonna be part of the redaction?
I don't think so. I think the way that people feel about why the levy passed or why it didn't, as long as they're, and listen, when I say inappropriate, I'm not judging people. What I'm looking for from a legal perspective is whether or not it violates some individual privacy rights. So yeah, the comments about why the levy's passed or viewpoints on the levy, I think those are fair game. And it might be helpful for you.
I might be an outlier here. I would read the comments. If nobody else wants them, I can absolutely let it go. But my vote would be that I would probably read the comments. I'm a fast reader. It's 400 comments. Read them all.
It sounds to me like there's at least some interest on some of the trustees to see the actual comments. And again, I can get those to you. Just understand that when I do, those become public record, which is again, why I'm going to review them again and redact any comments that potentially violate any individual privacy rights. Makes sense?
You don't have to do it just for me.
Yes,
I'm just.
my assumption.
I thought it was.
Okay, Liz, your turn.
Hold on here.
Good, good. We pay her by the hour.
What's the price of having them redacted?
Everybody's wondering if this is gonna be an additional cost.
Or me to review
Yeah,
go
they
back and
review them and
results?
do all the redactions. Yes,
No, I'm not going to do that to you.
thank you. Clarify that. Okay.
By the way, sorry for not being there in person tonight. I had to make a judgment call when I was in Havre about whether to keep going in a blizzard or whether to turn south and go towards Great Falls.
I understand. Okay, we're ready for the next part.
I think, Deborah, if you wanted to go over the salaries that you had covered, and then maybe, I can take over.
Yeah, so just let me briefly explain on the salaries. I think that somebody wanted that information, and quite frankly, I think it's important for you to have. So in terms of the AA salaries, they range, quite frankly, from our largest AA, which is Billings, at $205,000 a year. And remember, these are base salaries. This does not include the total compensation package. And remember, when we put the promotional brochure together, we need to put something in there. And I would tell you that probably a salary range, the way that we did in previous searches for your district. So Billings is at the top at about 205. Belgrade is at the bottom at about 165, understanding that the Belgrade superintendent is a fairly new superintendent. But if you're looking at the average right now of AA superintendent salaries, it's right at about 181,000. And I know that, you know, for you guys in terms of setting that range, of course, you want to be cognizant of, you know, the way that schools operate and spending your money wisely. I want you also to be thinking about setting a salary range that is going to garner the best of the best. And so if you were asked, and you don't need to decide this tonight, we can decide this when we put the final touches on the brochure and the board is comfortable with what it says and the information that's included in there. So again, the average of a AA superintendent right now, looking at the 8 AAs, is about 181,000. And again, I think you want to be thinking about not being the lowest. I don't know if you want to be the highest. I just would tell you that when you're looking at a CEO of a large school system in Montana, I wouldn't cut yourself short by $20,000 or $30,000. And again, that's opinionised, but I've seen it time and time again where people tend to go low. And at times they wish they would have raised the salary range to get a better pool of candidates.
So once we have that, when do we need to have that number finalized?
I think, well, obviously you need to have it finalized, and you don't need a number necessarily, Heather. I would encourage you to think about a range. And of course, that needs to be finalized, I would say, by the end of November so that we can get that position posted, and sooner if you want to do that. I don't know if you want to handle that through your personnel committee and bring a recommendation to the board. That's entirely up to you guys. I just know that we need to have consensus around what that salary range would look like.
We put on the superintendent profile.
We do, yes. You put, salary range, X to Y, dependent upon experience. Yes.
Deborah, do you have those numbers in a spreadsheet that you can send out to us to see the range? And, because one of the previous presentations tonight also had the staff population, and I was also wondering if we could somehow come up with the student population that corresponds to each of the districts, if you have that information available.
I can get that information to you, and I will include both the staff population and the student population. Because I don't have that.
have on it Randy's, current salary and Micah's last salary before they left. What we were paying, what we are paying. The numbers on there too.
Set this on the agenda for the.
Is that a question of me or a comment?
Sorry,
couldn't hear it.
Deborah, I was asking Liz and Jack to get it on, the personnel committee agenda and our finance committee, so we get a range for you.
Gotcha.
I was waving to the news.
We'll get a range for you and we'll get back to you with that one, Deborah. Was there anything else that you needed us to be working on or doing?
I don't think so. It's my understanding, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, okay? That the personnel committee is the one that is, Wendy is putting a draft together. And again, I don't want there to be a disconnect here, but I guess I need clarity about when Wendy is working on the draft promotional brochure. Is she working with the personnel committee and you guys are then going to make a recommendation to the board? Or what are the logistics in terms of our communications with the district on this? Because I don't want us to be spinning our wheels.
Well, the personnel committee, I assume, is going to meet on Wednesday the 8th, because our next board meeting is the 14th, and the personnel and the finance committee will meet on the 10th. So whether you're communicating with Liz or you're communicating with Denise or you're communicating with Heather, that doesn't matter to me, but those are the two dates that are important coming up. And so the question I have is, November 14th is when we would have a board meeting that might address the full board's discussion on it. Is that too late for you?
No, I don't think so. I think that'll work just fine.
Okay.
Well, and Deborah, I think when it was brought up at the last personnel meeting, I think we were just trying to get a consensus. Had a few board members there that day, so we were able to kind of just throw out ideas of what we were looking for. Just trying to change it from the last time we went through this process, where the only time we really discussed this as a group was at our actual meeting. So I guess we were just trying to get the ball rolling of maybe just throwing some ideas out there so we could give those to Wendy to add in. We had a few pieces that we wanted to make sure that, you know, were important, that we wanted to change and add into, the superintendent profile.
Perfect. So it sounds to me like then, and again, just for clarity, that the personnel committee, whether that be you, Heather, or Liz, that our communications right now, and Wendy copies me, just so you know, on all of those communications. So I will also be in the loop in terms of, you know, suggested inclusion of information in that.
And maybe if Wendy has a draft or something ready, by the 8th, maybe we'd be able to review that at personnel.
That's what I was thinking too. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be really helpful. We could look it over there then, discuss salary ranges at that point, finalize something at finance, which would be 2 days later, and then we'd be able to bring the final proposal to the board of what the profile looks like.
Sounds good.
I don't know if you were thinking the spreadsheet would be available at the 8th, but if the spreadsheet's available next week, that'd be better for us to contemplate all that before any of those other meetings.
I will get you the spreadsheet before the end of this week. How does that sound?
You can do next week, that's fine.
I like to not only meet your expectations, Jack, but exceed them.
Thank you.
That sounds good. I think, the more subcommittee meetings we have where we can have these discussions and board members have the opportunity to come in these discussions, it'll just make it a lot easier for our next board meeting.
Do you want, and I don't know if you want my input, when I send you the spreadsheet, do you want my input on what I would or what we would recommend for a salary range? Or do you not want that input?
Okay, any other questions? In general or on this piece? On this piece, or Deborah?
I had one, but I'm not. So I wasn't totally sure on who, I don't know who put together what, but there was one place in the, what we were looking for superintendent, additional desires or something, and it said experience as a superintendent, and it didn't say experience as a superintendent in a large school district, and I know that was a big part of our discussion last time, so I thought the board might want to clarify that and say that if we're asking for our wish list is actually about experience in a large district, not.
We did have that discussion at the, personnel meeting, because that did come up last time, and it was a big, we were kind of all over the board. Jack?
Well, none of the superintendents we have hired in the last 30 years came from a large school district.
I just think we're making a wish.
I think that day we ruled that out, correct? If
We
I remember
ruled,
correctly.
we ruled
I
out
think the wish
principals.
list is the second part of this work.
Oh,
So you have not even got to.
We'll get to the wish list. Okay.
Or can log out.
I didn't know what Deborah had done, what you had
Right.
done.
Right.
You're discouraged.
Was there a question I couldn't hear with the,
Sorry, but we were just having a side conversation. We'll get to all of that in
Put the microphone on the other
rest of
side
this
of the
presentation.
computer, there you go.
Deborah, with that, I think everybody has their questions asked and answered. You want to stick around for this portion, or are we saying goodbye?
I think I will sign off unless you need me on here.
I think we're good. Thank you. Thanks for hanging in throughout the whole meeting.
All right,
Thank
thanks, you guys.
Thanks. Talk to you soon. Liz?
Welcome to the work session topic. Really frankly, visions about an hour for this next piece, which is, I do think it's still important so we can help guide MTSBA, guide Wendy, and really have you guys figure out as a unified front coming forward where we're at. So this presentation, was drafted. It is really convoluted at this meeting. This was sort of the what if something happens like a winter storm. And this needs to be done in-house. So, if we go to our first slide, thanks, Matt, you're already there. This is the first slide that was at the personnel committee meeting. Then it was sort of an open discussion. So, some advice was given that you guys might want or appreciate some guiding questions to really draw out what your ideal superintendent is, not to deter people from applying, but to actually have a solidarity moving forward. You guys are 11 people, if you want to go to the next map. You guys are 11 people with all varying views and different perspectives, and having you guys come together is going to be a pair to whoever applies in interviews, let alone representing our entire. So I would really like to move forward. I don't know timeline-wise if you want me to expedite, but I do want to help guide the process with MTSBA and our superintendent search team. So you guys just, like Heather was saying, I don't know that you guys could have the opportunity to sit full board and actually talk about who this person is, what. Something that Matt suggested was skill, talents, and experience. So if you can just keep those in mind, these are guiding questions that will kind of come out, and they might bring up some issues with the district that we need to address. But the focus of this is not to hone in on those areas. It would be who is the person that's going to help with those, and what are the skills, talents. That will help. So when someone says something in an interview, you can think back to maybe something that really resonated with you as a board before moving forward. That's the idea behind today. Some major areas of focus then for us are what are our vision, our visionary leadership qualities that, I'm kind of glad, even though it's a long meeting, but this work session was originally for transformational. I was hoping we could have that experience prior to this. It was brought up kind of in a different way with our charter school discussion. So kind of that dream big moment, goals, what does that look like for individual kids, and who's going to lead us in that? Fiscal management, so where are we going with that? Communication, facilities management, and then that area for you to just give input. I'm going to be typing while you guys are just talking. You have the guided questions to help draw out. I was hoping for 10 minutes for each of these areas and just keep us. That was when I thought we were probably going to start this. But it is important work. So just, this is going to take as long as it takes, but I really do hope that we invest to reinvigorate ourselves. So I am listening. I'm also taking. But visionary leadership, So for centering background, ECD, and transformational learning, which was that first slide, I don't know if you want to just go back up. So this is the one that is shown at the bottom right, and then it also ties in with our work, which are all aligned to our strategic. First guiding question, what expectations do you have for our superintendent? Yep.
I think that in the superintendent's first year, one of the biggest things they have to do is get buy-in from the rest of the staff, and especially when it comes to vision leadership. It has to be the kind of person who can demonstrate through their own work that they can trust it, that they have vision. I don't think that implementing in the first year is reasonable or even the best. I think that the best thing in that first year is to show their character, gain that trust, and then 5 years out, I think one of the big parts is communication. Like the second year, to particularly the principals and the rest of the superintendent staff. At 5 years out is a hard one, but I think the first year you gain the trust, and the second year you really start to communicate.
Going back to,
I think they need to be transparent but also trustworthy. That line between really communicating openly and not hiding things while still, not making anybody feel like they're gonna get thrown under the bus. They come with concerns. I think that's a really good one, so they need to be ready and then really clear communicators.
you don't also need to go at your own pace.
I like the notes from the personnel. I like just discussing those, because that's where everything is already.
I mean, we did go through personnel. I think that if we're going to dig into these, or the open-endedness of personnel,
Okay, ready, Liz? I think they need to be organized, they need to be good listener, they need to be understanding and compassionate, a team player, loyal, not more words. That's what I see. Approachable, so not way high up. And I think trustworthy, like if I bring them something, I don't need them running to their best buddy and then start in flames. That's a big one.
so if we move, if you guys,
Really, well, I guess, moving on, but I'm really interested in superintendents that have experience. We have such great staff in our app, nuts and bolts, that for the actual skills of our superintendent, I feel like, kind of that quality, both for teachers and staff, but also for community. Trust in that connection. Understand what we need to do or how we need to do.
over, like,
I don't know. No comment. Sorry, Liz.
we're all the way down to slide 7.
Oh.
That's okay. So what goals do you guys have for our district in the near?
I'm struggling a little bit. You know, we had the strategic plan and what that was going to entail, and I'm struggling a little bit knowing what, that's a lot of what they were talking about with the charter schools, doing that same, you know, with the competency-based learning, project-based, personalized learning, and, being more flexible. So I feel like the whole system just got jumbled around, and now we're trying to figure out where we're at with that, because that plays a big part into who we bring in. Like, I don't know, it's confusing to me to have the charter schools going down the same path as our strategic plan. So, you know, the strategic plan prior to that was very important, you know, because that's where we're headed. Are we still headed that same direction as far as that goes? But it's like parallel with the. Okay.
That's a really good question. When we talked about it, you know, it just creates a fast lane, and we're doing a lot of this stuff, and you're probably gonna see a lot of that stuff mature inside of all of our schools.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing we've talked a lot about lately is, this is our first year of actually doing anything. We've been working hard to create a vision and a shared vision around this work, and we have some racehorses on our staff and on our admin team, and we just wanna let them out and let them run. And so we're trying to coordinate and organize the basic principles, but then also give them the flexibility and autonomy to just run with their energy. And this charter thing came up, and we went, how does this align? And we went, if it fits our vision, we should go for it. If it doesn't fit our vision, if we don't think this is best for kids, we're not gonna touch it. We're not gonna touch it just for money, right? And so it checked those boxes, and we went, this is probably just fast tracking a lot of our ideas. Let's see what happens. But yeah, I agree with Lloyd. I think what you're saying is, that strategic plan, that was a lot of work, and that's a really good document, and we've been working really hard to implement those things. That's probably the vision, right?
Yeah.
For example, they be for all the schools, including the charter schools too, right?
Yep.
And this board will be the board for.
What didn't come up tonight is, when we were talking about the 80% of the base, is each individual district now or school system would have an opportunity to run levies for their systems. So, you know, and Denise and I didn't really dig into this, but they're their own entities. So these are a lot of questions we need to answer. It's like,
So if there was a separate governing board that came to. If you approved it and it went, it would be a separate legal, they would get to run their own. Out of the, they take territory out of your existing, there was no discussion about it.
I think you're referring to community choice versus a separate public charter school, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, there was no discussion about it. In your proposal.
right, my understanding is, if we ran an elementary levy and we had an elementary charter, just because we passed an elementary levy for our general school, the charter school levy, it wouldn't be connected.
But the finances are 100% separate. Everybody gets paid, teachers and everything, and all the
I
money.
didn't mean to rabbit trail us.
Yeah.
But I think the big answer in the room is, like, if you disagree with Denise, you change your mind.
Yeah.
Because people call her from across the state to get her opinion, so.
Okay.
Those are all questions we still have to iron out.
Yeah,
There are a million
we're off
questions involved.
track.
So right now, we're getting it back to you.
Okay, I have more feedback on these questions. So what I have wanted has had to change a little bit because of the budget constraints. And so when I think about where we currently are in transformational learning, I believe that the most important goals and the most urgent goals are the ones that we can meet first, which is why I think that going with the charter schools was really great. And I think that going with anything that teachers can pull off is the right thing to do. I think that because we have some real budget constraints, going with what we have is important. So what I would want from a superintendent candidate is someone who has a clear understanding of what we're doing, is open-minded to new ideas, from feedback from all of the staff. Like, I really want somebody that is open to new ideas and able to be adaptable to a situation. And I would really like if they had, in the timeline of when they decided to apply and when they came for an interview, had looked into and had some understanding of.
I don't think it's an end-all, but they necessarily know exactly what we're working on, what we're doing, but to me, a requirement is that they share this vision. They can see where we're going, and they're willing to get on board and come up with it and help promote this. And building a relationship with the community, I think you all said that, and I think that has to be extremely trustworthy. They have to have really good speaking skills and make a connection. That's where we're lacking. We can search to the moon and back for this perfect person who knows how to get a levy passed, but they don't know our community. So it's a tricky situation, and I think it really boils down to trust, and it boils.
So number 5, if we do, how is the
I would love to implement quarterly reviews of the superintendent, but have the teachers who work with them or the administration that works with them do an assessment on them to hold them accountable for all of their everything. Because right now, there's nothing in there that assesses a superintendent. Once a year. Once a year.
I agree.
And so,
Quarterly assessment.
if we're looking at the superintendent that we're looking to hire, what skills or talents want them to have to be able to self-assess, or to provide them their evaluation?
I think humility, like ownership. You know, not all of us do the right thing all the time, but own your mistakes, you know? I mean, you might, Liz, but, no.
I don't love standardized tests, but I would like it if they had some kind of experience and history where they could show that in their prior experience, they made progress with that in their other schools. That these learning outcomes, in whatever way they were measured from their prior employment, somehow benefited by their leadership.
Their willingness to do a self-assessment, in working with employees, identifying things they think that they're good at, and things that they can bring to the table, and how that can align with their actually daily tasks. Strengths. Might be better served by, not that the superintendent is going to be this end all be all and have everything. It's just not going to happen. I think we need to figure out, like what you're doing here, the really key things that we know that we have gaps at and that we need.
And then the spirit of moving forward. The next one, fiscal management, that is an actual link for that. Here's our history.
Make it bigger, Matt.
Does everybody realize that there's no other place in Montana that has 13 rural schools going into the
Yeah.
high school? And that no other state has the same kind of thing?
I don't know, did you read the comments on the Daily Interlake article? They were all complaining about the levy. You weren't gonna get a levy passed because of what you did during COVID. It's like, we're a new board, we're a new administration, come on. You're just harming the kids.
So, I mean, it goes very handily from passing. With that in mind, if we want to go back.
We will find superintendents that have passed levies, but it's because it's all one district.
Mhm.
We're not gonna find anybody that has the characteristics of this district where it has 13 rural ones that have a different opinion than the Kalispell Elementary.
I think, yes. Levies has been under several different superintendents with different personalities, with different, connections to the community. Not past high school levies. One or two superintendents. You don't know that past experience is going to be an indicator of the superintendent's ability to pass a high school levy.
No.
At our current financial, and we're looking.
With numbers, creative, knows the Montana laws.
Print money.
I may see it very differently than other people, but to me, I was really affected when Ursula years ago said something about superintendents having vision, superintendents bringing energy and path forward to a district versus just saying, let's keep in the same paths we're in. And how enervating that can be. And to me, I really think a budget is not seen as, or should not be seen as, what do I need to cut? But what can I do with, what can I do? Money is vision. Money is saying, I want to spend money on this because I want this to happen. And so to me, it's somebody who flips script a little bit and doesn't say, what can't we afford? Oh, we spend money on this because we always have, but say, we want to support this. This is our vision. We put our money towards these things. And I don't often see that in a person, and I'd love to see that type of person, that type of way of thinking about budget.
Are we moving forward on the next question?
We're just doing fiscal management.
Yeah.
That's what I meant, like number 3.
Yeah.
I think number 3, I think a barrier we're gonna face is everybody has a preconceived notion about COVID and our board and not being trustworthy, not being transparent. That's all the comments you read on the internet, on the Speak-In, on the Daily Inter, like all of them. We're all being punished for those years, and it's devastating to our kids. I think that's a huge barrier we need to get over and through. I guess community relationships, speaking skills, holding events where he or she will sit there and like talk to people, walk around in the community. Big growth, where we can have everybody come, feed the community. All the other ones, like approachable, knowledgeable, smart,
Well, we're gonna need those things, but it's also gonna be time to
Right.
gain that trust. It's
Right, but the
time.
willingness to.
Yeah, so honestly, the answer to all of these, community
Right.
and trustworthy, time. And the community willing to give them a chance and trust them with them.
I would say somebody who is, in order to accomplish that, somebody who's more of a charismatic speaker and a above average writer, somebody who can really capture the attention of the public, in order to change things. If you send somebody who's deadpan out to the outlying districts to try to garner support for our schools, it's not gonna go as well as if you have somebody who's really charismatic, really cares, really, boosts up the energy of those areas. So charismatic and above average writer. Creative writing.
I trust the teacher with my kids. I trust the superintendent to make sure that rules are applied evenly across all the children. To me, trust is something I have in my teacher. I expect my teacher, if something is going wrong with a child in that classroom, the teacher is dealing with it. To me, a superintendent is making sure that every kid is being dealt with well across the district. It's a very different sort of trust. It's a trust they won't play favorite. And I guess, of course, I have trust with teachers. Trust that to ensure the right thing is done, and that the rules are in place to keep ensuring the right things are done, even if that's your person. That's why I care about policy, because you need somebody who cares about putting the policies in place that will protect everyone moving forward.
A follow through on our policies.
Yes, very much.
Follow through would be great.
I think teachers have a gray area that they can, they can work within, creative license, if you will, for what they teach. I think superintendents need to be very black and white. We have this policy to get rid of it or follow it. But I think the public sees, some things not enforced and other things enforced, and they start to get irritated. And I would like to see a superintendent who's a little bit more black and white.
Number 4 is a really important one. What do you see as tools?
Rebecca already kind of said it, but I really think that creativity, so the experience without passing the levy, if they were able to do some tools and experience, the skill would be creativity and follow through, talent, all the same ones, but, and I don't want to, say it and have it be true, but I don't know, no matter which superintendent we hire, I don't know that that is going to make a difference. Tax levies. To be very creative with the money we do have.
I'm pretty stuck writing very questions. If they were all kind of communicating. So if you want to just take a couple minutes, look at all 5.
I think we've all said it, and I think we all think it this is a communication job. This is you reach out to people. This is at its heart. I mean, at least not all of it, but a very large piece of this job is communication in both directions. So it has to be somebody who accepts what they hear and doesn't take it personally, and it has to be somebody who can write an email or talk to a person in this is a communications job. You're representing the district in every way.
Well, I'm gonna throw this out there too, and then my concern is just my district that I represent. I'm concerned that if we bring somebody in from out of state, you walk in saying, hey, I'm from X, Y, and Z state, you lost them. You've lost my entire district. I know there's other districts here that will be exactly the same way. Those are all our high school districts that are voting no, and I'm concerned about that. They can have great communication skills, and they are gonna lose every one of our community members in my area, I'm sure yours, by just being from an out of.
So, in the spirit of not having down our pool.
I'm just throwing it out there.
You could say it as somebody who understands community, has experience in communities that are similar to, like, more appropriate ways.
I'm not gonna fire that off to Wendy.
I know other people are thinking it.
Experience in
I do think
unpacking
it would be
it.
important to address if we did have a super qualified candidate Fairfax meets all the other boxes, they are on state, what would you expect for skills or talents or experiences, that you could see help for what you just said?
I don't know if there's anything. Honestly, they could check all those boxes, and I do not know that they are gonna accept that person. That's my concern.
Like a scarlet letter.
It is.
I have a quick question, and this is related, but Jack says we're the only one in the country who has all these outlying districts. And I'd pay $300,000 a year for a superintendent who could just make this one big district and pull those elementary schools in. Like, does that fall under?
Build their own high schools, darn it.
Yeah, is that something that would fall under the superintendent, or is it even possible?
No,
Board.
not unless all
board?
the other boards agree to do it.
You're talking about something that would have to be done in the legislature.
Okay.
An incentive program, and that's not gonna happen. On a
Guy
separate-
can dream.
On a separate note, the last 4 superintendents, half have been from out of state and half have been in-state. And Mark Plateau, who is from out of state, is the one that successfully got the $54 million bond issue passed by everybody. But there's a lot of other elements that made that work because each building had something done to it. So it was able to get a lot of rural areas because of the VOAG and because of Linderman. And then also all the elementary buildings had something done. Glacier and Flathead each had something done. So there was something that appealed to everybody.
That's the creativity we need.
And Mark set all that up in the early stages of developing it all. And then it was a 12-month process to talk about all the different things that were going to go on in that. And it was a group of about 40 people that met once a month for 11 months. So, yeah, there's a whole bunch of processes that need to occur, but, how do you attract the rural with an operating levy versus a bond levy is going to be our challenge, and it may just be a cycle we're going to have to go through. You already know.
So for the 5th one, going back to this one, for the 5th one, I would like, the superintendent to be able to prioritize and then delegate the communication responsible for, so that they can really, do an exceptional job with less things. We don't have a communications person. That's one of those things. Coming in is going to, they are kind of responsible for all of these things. Randy, I don't know if you can talk about the variety of things that we are asking the superintendent to communicate, but I would really like them to be able to prioritize and delegate. It would be lovely if it could be to a communications director or whatever the position would be, but that's something I would like.
Okay, number 3, I think with transparency, they should respond to adversity with transparency to the community. I think that would build trust within the community. Balance would be wordsmithing, knowing what to say, knowing what not to say. I don't know what you want to put for experience on that, but just hold yourself accountable. I mean, yeah.
Oh, I just was gonna say, even with a communication, suppose we hired a communications director tomorrow, there's still a lot of communications that involved sending out information about a full closure, or whether it's a person and about, there's a lot of communication. Even if we had a communications director in the district who deals with big scale communications, there's still a lot of communications calls on.
Next one.
I'd like to hear some thoughts on, we have some, or was the big one, so how are you expecting our superintendent candidate, our team?
Quarterly reviews. We hold him accountable.
Liz, I would just
No, he
say-
could hold his
Oh, he
staff
could have-
accountable that way.
Liz, I would just say that he, you know, sets good expectations, high expectations.
I think also adding to that is kind of, but we don't necessarily as the board always know how the superintendent is holding their team accountable. And I think that there's an element, you know, not making it everyone's business and doing risk or shame people or isolate people. I don't necessarily know how I personally, so having a high standard that feeling safe.
We have to remember that we only, as a board, we only have two people that we're responsible for. The superintendent and the clerk, business manager. And that we have no, I'm gonna almost say legal right to participate or, the only other, let me back up, the only other role we have is hiring people. And address recommendations of termination or other things like that. So we do not have any authority, legal or otherwise, for evaluating anybody below the superintendent. So even though quarterly reviews are important, we can do that with the superintendent, with the district clerk, but we can't do it with anybody else.
Right, the question was how he could hold his team accountable, and I think if there was a review process, people would get their job done.
I guess for me, it's noticing and support. If the people who work under the superintendent, I would hope that our next superintendent, male or female, or both for that matter, would, very much notice if there was a principal, say, who was not getting the effects that they wanted, and would support that person in being, in what they needed to achieve goals that we were hoping to set for them. So to me, it's not about accountable, which is a very adversarial sort of situation or threatening situation. It's about being aware of what's happening in the district and putting these situations in place so that people can be supported and grow and do better.
Know how to handle the
Before we get to other things. Facility management, so we have our long-range facility. I think number 2 is gonna be fair way.
Where we thought, oh, you know, are we going to build another building? I know that we, maybe we could pass a bond, I don't know if we could pass a build a new building with the future. Yeah, so I think that it's a city thing again. That, it would be nice if perhaps they had some kind of experience doing something alternative.
Number 3. I don't think that.
We have our other section.
I think that what Jen just said is key, to know when you have to jump now, to know when something is as important as keeping life. You know, to know about like, so when the lead testing was going on in our schools, you know, we were dealing with it within weeks, if not hours or days. Yeah, to have that focus of knowing, of having an instinct for what is important and what is chaff.
Lead testing took about a year and a half to get going.
Right, once we started, we, accurate.
I was just extremely, and
see you as, you know, whatever happened next, never mind.
It's
I'm
not
trying to
muddy.
be
Were you
supportive.
were you saying you don't think it's muddy, you think she's doing a great job?
I was saying, I think we're doing a great job, don't take the muddy comments to heart.
Well, I think we had some clarification tonight, and we were able to see both sides, and I think where Deborah was coming from also is maybe she hasn't always had an HR person that was helping run the show, maybe they did everything, and I think that's maybe where the confusion.
I think too, having a solid defined timeline will help drive. So we know who's doing what at what.
And I like how we have these on here, so we know what to expect at, we're gonna discuss this further at personnel, it's gonna be further at finance. And throwing it out at a board meeting saying, by the way, this is the salary range we're talking about, so you get. Do you have anything else, Liz? Okay, does anybody have any further questions? None? Do I have a
Public
motion
comment.
to?
No, public comment. And, oh, we don't want to have the end
It's not an
time.
action item.
Motion to adjourn.
I am too tired.
What you asking?
Yes, so I have a motion to adjourn.
Yep.
Yes.
Second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
No,
Meeting
let's do it,
adjourned.
I was 6 hours.
I think everybody was seconded it.
Thank you, Liz.
Wondering, thanks everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
I think Krista, Denise, I think it's Krista officially.
Take
posted
it,
and
we
I
don't
think
care.
Jen might have been the first.